Boring history for sleep. How the Nubian Kingdom of Kush quietly outshined ancient Egypt. A 2 to 3 hour sleep podcast script. Duhimer Hook, 10 to 12 minutes. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world holds its breath between night and morning, there exists a space for forgotten stories. Stories that whisper rather than shout, that shimmer like gold dust in river sand rather than blaze like conquering fires. Tonight, we travel not to the famous pyramids that pierce the desert sky north of here, but to a gentler kingdom, where wisdom flowed as steadily as the great river itself. Picture, if you will, the soft light of an oil lamp flickering against mud brick walls, its golden glow dancing across surfaces worn smooth by generations of gentle hands. The flame burns steady and warm, fed by oil pressed from seeds gathered along the riverbank, contained within a lamp shaped by a potter who learned the craft from her grandmother, who learned it from hers, stretching back through an unbroken chain of quiet mastery. The scent of frankincense drifts through narrow doorways, carried on air that still holds the coolness of night but promises the warmth of day. This precious resin, gathered from trees that grow in the eastern deserts, burns slowly on small altars where families offer their morning gratitude to gods who are as close as the breath in their lungs, as present as the water that flows past their doors. Listen. Can you hear it? The distant sound of the Nile lapping against reed boats, their hulls darkened by countless journeys between villages scattered like jewels along the great river's banks. The boats rock gently at their moorings, carrying within their holds the treasures of a kingdom that measures wealth not in conquered territories, but in the quiet excellence of daily life. This is Kush, the land that Romans called Ethiopia, the kingdom that pharaohs both feared and respected, the civilization that quietly, patiently, built something more enduring than monuments. Here, in what we now call Sudan, along the gentle curves of the Nile as it flows toward Egypt, there lived people whose names have been worn smooth by time, like river stones, polished by centuries of patient water. They were goldsmiths whose fingers could coax precious metal into forms so delicate they seemed to breathe. Ironworkers who understood the secret songs that different metals sang as they heated and cooled, who could hear in the ring of hammer on anvil the voice of the metal itself, telling them when it was ready to be shaped. Scribes who developed their own writing, creating symbols that could capture not just the sounds of their language, but something of its rhythm, its music, its heart. They were mothers who ground grain in the pre-dawn darkness, their movements so steady and rhythmic that the sound became a kind of meditation, a prayer offered to the gods of harvest and home. Fathers who taught their children to read the subtle signs that showed when the river would flood, when the rains would come, when it was time to plant and when to harvest. They were boat builders whose vessels could navigate the treacherous cataracts that broke the river into 1,000 silver streams, and still be gentle enough to carry a sleeping child without waking her. Weavers who could create cloth so fine it felt like captured moonlight, yet so strong it would last for generations. Traders who could speak a dozen languages and still remember the particular way their own grandmother had pronounced their name. The story we're about to unfold together is not one of dramatic battles or the rise and fall of kings, though kings there were, and queens too. Powerful women who ruled not as regent mothers, but as sovereigns in their own right, chosen for their wisdom and their ability to see the long path that led to prosperity for all their people. Instead, this is the story of how a people learned to read the sky for rain, to coax iron from stone with patience rather than force, to trade fairly across vast distances without losing their souls to the hunger for profit. It's about the soft persistence of daily life, the accumulation of small wisdoms, and the way a culture can shine not through conquest, but through the gentle mastery of living well. It's about the way a civilization can outlast empires by learning to bend like reed grass in the wind, to flow around obstacles like water finding its way to the sea, to endure through seasons of plenty and seasons of hardship with the same steady patience that marks the turning of the stars. So let yourself settle in, as the ancient Kushites might have settled beside their evening fires, watching the last light fade from the western sky while the first stars began their ancient dance overhead. Let the gentle rhythms of this distant time and place carry you away from the urgencies of our modern world into a space where time moves like honey, where work is a form of prayer, and where the greatest achievements are often the quietest ones. Let us begin this gentle journey into a time when the sun set each day on a kingdom that knew its own worth and never felt the need to shout about it. A kingdom where the most profound victories were often invisible ones: the development of character, the accumulation of wisdom, the patient creation of beauty in objects so humble they might escape notice, yet so perfectly crafted they could teach anyone who handled them something about what it means to work with love. Act 1. The gentle awakening of the Kushite world. The river's morning song. The morning mist rises from the Nile like the breath of sleeping gods, curling around the islands of granite that break the river's surface, like the backs of gentle giants. Each wisp of vapor carries with it the dreams of the night, the coolness that has blessed the earth during the hours of darkness, the promise of another day in the endless cycle that has governed life along this river since time began. This is Kush, in the year we might call 750 BCE, though time moves differently here, marked not by the rigid calendars of distant scribes, but by the river's own rhythm, flood season and dry season, the time when the ibis return and the time when they depart, planting time and harvest time, the eternal cycle that has governed life along this stretch of the Nile for countless generations. The sun climbs slowly over the eastern hills, those ancient ridges that have watched over this valley since the earth was young. As its first rays touch the water, the river transforms into a mirror of molten gold, reflecting back the light in patterns that shift and dance with each gentle movement of the current. Already the air carries the promise of heat, but for now, in these precious dawn hours, the world feels gentle and full of possibility. Smoke rises from cooking fires in the scattered villages that dot the riverbank, each column a slender thread connecting earth to sky, each one marking a place where families are beginning their day with the same quiet rituals their ancestors have performed for generations. The smoke carries with it the sense of the morning meal: bread baking on flat stones heated in the coals, porridge made from grain stored through the dry season, fish caught in nets set the evening before. Along the water's edge, cattle come to drink, their movements unhurried, their presence a reminder of the wealth that flows from the careful tending of herds. These animals, descendants of the great aurochs that once roamed freely across all of Africa, have been shaped by generations of selective breeding into creatures perfectly adapted to life along the Nile. Their hides provide leather for 1,000 uses. Their milk nourishes children and the elderly. Their strength powers the simple machines that make agriculture possible in this land between desert and river. Egrets stand motionless in the shallows, their white forms reflected perfectly in the still water, waiting with infinite patience for the small fish that will provide their morning meal. These birds, sacred to the gods of the river, embody the patience that characterizes all life in Kush, the understanding that good things come to those who wait, who watch, who move, only when the moment is exactly right. In the city of Napata, built in the shadow of the sacred mountain Jebel Barkal, the streets are beginning to stir with life. Unlike the grand formal avenues of Egyptian cities with their processional ways designed for royal spectacles, these streets wind naturally, following the contours of the land, creating intimate spaces where neighbors can pause to share the morning's first conversations, where children can play safely under the watchful eyes of the entire community. The houses are built of sun-dried brick, their walls thick enough to keep out the heat of midday, their surfaces smoothed and polished until they gleam like pottery in the morning. Light. Each house is designed not as a fortress against the world, but as a haven of peace and comfort, a place where families can gather, where the work of daily life can be performed with dignity and grace. The courtyards that form the heart of each home are carefully planned to catch and hold the slightest breeze, to create spaces where the harsh sun is tempered by shade, where water can be stored in jars that keep it cool even during the hottest part of the day. Small trees grow in these courtyards, date palms whose fruit provides sweetness, acacia trees whose leaves can be ground into medicines, tamarind trees whose pods can be turned into a cooling drink. The river here is different from the narrow, controlled channel it will become as it flows north into Egypt. Here it spreads wide and lazy, creating islands and backwaters, marshlands, where cattle come to drink and children learn to swim following techniques passed down through generations of river people. The water is clear enough that you can see the silver flash of fish in the shallows, and shallow enough in many places that a person can wade across, following paths known to the local fishermen for generations. This landscape shapes its people just as surely as they shape it. There's no hurry here, no sense of time pressing forward with relentless urgency. The Kushites have learned to move with the rhythm of the river, to work with the cycles of wet and dry, to find abundance not through force, but through patience and careful observation. They have learned to read the subtle signs that tell them when the rains will come, the behavior of certain birds, the scent carried on the evening breeze, the particular quality of light that appears in the sky just before the weather changes. They know which plants will thrive in different types of soil, how to preserve grain so it will last through the dry season, how to work with the natural flood cycle to bring water to fields that lie far from the river's edge. The Awakening House. In a small house near the market quarter of Napata, a woman named Alara is beginning her day as countless generations of women have begun theirs, grinding grain for the morning meal, her movements steady and rhythmic, almost meditative. But this simple activity, performed in countless homes across the kingdom each morning, contains within it layers of knowledge and skill that have been refined over centuries. The grinding stone itself tells a story of patient craftsmanship. Cut from granite quarried in the hills east of the river, it has been shaped and polished until its surface is perfectly smooth, perfectly level, capable of reducing the hardest grain to the finest flour. The stone was made by Alara's grandfather, who learned the technique from his father, who learned it from his father before him, each generation adding small improvements to the design. The grain she grinds comes from fields that have been cultivated along this stretch of the river for over 1,000 years. The varieties of millet and sorghum grown here have been selected over countless seasons for their ability to thrive in the variable rainfall of the region, for their resistance to the insects and diseases that can destroy a crop, for their nutritional value and their ability to be stored for long periods without spoiling. The sound of the grinding stone creates a gentle percussion that harmonizes with the distant lowing of cattle, the soft chatter of early vendors setting up their stalls, the rhythmic splashing of women washing clothes at the river's edge. This morning symphony is the same one that has marked the beginning of each day in Kush for generations, a musical prayer of gratitude for abundance, for the continuation of life, for another day in which to practice the small arts that make existence not just possible, but beautiful. Alara is perhaps 30 years old, though age is measured differently here. marked more by wisdom and experience than by the counting of years. Her skin is the warm brown of river earth after the flood has receded, and her hair is braided in intricate patterns that speak of her family lineage, her social position, her personal history. Each braid tells a story, this one marking her marriage, that one commemorating the birth of her first child, another recording her initiation into the mysteries of her craft guild. Around her neck, she wears a simple gold pendant, not a display of wealth, but a talisman passed down from her grandmother, carrying within its burnished surface the accumulated blessings of generations. The pendant is small, no larger than a thumbnail, but its creation required skills that take years to master. The gold was panned from river sand by miners who knew exactly which bends in the stream were most likely to yield the precious metal. It was refined using techniques that could remove impurities without losing any of the pure gold itself. It was shaped by a goldsmith who understood not just the technical aspects of metalworking, but the spiritual significance of creating an object that would be worn close to the heart. The design on the pendant is simple, a spiral that echoes the movement of water around a stone, the growth pattern of certain shells, the path that the sun traces across the sky as the seasons turn. This spiral appears throughout Kushite art, not because it is dictated by royal decree or religious authority, but because it emerges naturally from careful observation of the world, from an understanding of the patterns that govern growth and change and renewal. Her husband, Pianki, named for the great king but himself a humble craftsman, works with iron, one of the skills that sets Kush apart from its northern neighbors. While Egypt still struggles with the secrets of ironworking, the smiths of Kush have long since mastered the art of coaxing this stubborn metal into tools and weapons of remarkable quality. But Pianki approaches his craft with the same gentle patience that his wife brings to her grinding stone, understanding that iron, like all materials, has its own nature and must be worked with rather than against. Their house, like most in Napata, reflects a different philosophy of living than what one might find in the grand palaces of Egypt or the fortress cities of Mesopotamia. The rooms are arranged around a central courtyard where a small tree provides shade and a sense of growing life at the heart of the home. This tree, a young acacia that Alara planted when they were first married, connects the family to the cycles of the natural world, its growth marking the passage of years, its leaves providing medicine when needed, its shade creating a cool space where the family can gather during the heat of midday. The walls are decorated not with elaborate paintings of conquest and power, but with simple geometric patterns that echo the designs found in the natural world. The spiral of a shell, the branching of a tree, the endless flow of the river. These patterns are created not by professional artists, but by the family members themselves, each person adding elements that speak of their own experience and understanding. Water jars stand in the shade, their porous clay walls keeping the contents cool even as the day grows warm. These jars, like everything else in the house, represent the accumulated knowledge of generations. The clay comes from a particular bank of the river, where the mud has exactly the right properties for making pottery. It is prepared through a process that involves careful timing. The clay must be gathered when the river is at a certain level, aged for a specific period, mixed with temper made from ground pottery shards that come from jars that have completed their useful life and been recycled into new vessels. Reed mats cover the floors, woven by Alara herself during the long, quiet evenings when the day's work is done, and families gather to share stories and tend to the small tasks that keep a household running smoothly. The reeds come from marshes along the river, cut at the time of year when they are strong but still flexible, dried in the sun until they reach the perfect consistency for weaving. The patterns in the mats are traditional but each weaver adds her own variations, creating objects that are both functional and beautiful, that will last for years of daily use, while providing pleasure to all who see and feel them. The people of many rivers. The Kushites are a people of many origins, their bloodlines flowing together like tributary rivers joining the Nile. This blending of peoples is not the result of conquest or forced migration, but of the gradual, peaceful process by which different groups have found their way to this fertile valley and decided to make it their home. Some trace their ancestry to the ancient Nubians who first settled along this stretch of the river, learning to work with the seasonal floods, developing the agricultural techniques that could coax abundance from the sometimes harsh environment. These first settlers brought with them knowledge of the river's moods, understanding of which plants would thrive in different conditions, skills in working with reeds and clay and stone. Others descended from traders who came from the south following routes that connected the Nile Valley to the great forests and grasslands of the African interior. These migrants brought with them the knowledge of iron and the techniques of working with exotic woods and ivory. They carried stories of distant lands, of animals and plants unknown along the Nile, of different ways of organizing society and different understandings of the sacred. Still others arrived from the western deserts, nomadic peoples who had learned to find water in the most unlikely places, to navigate by the stars, to survive in landscapes where others would perish. When they settled into the rhythm of river life, they brought with them traditions of animal husbandry and leather working, knowledge of plants that could provide medicine or dye, understanding of weather patterns that helped predict the coming of rains. From the east came mountain peoples, accustomed to different altitudes and climates, skilled in working with stone and metal, bringing techniques for terracing hillsides and channeling water that would prove invaluable in extending agriculture beyond the immediate river valley. They brought songs and dances that celebrated the wild places, stories of spirits that lived in caves and peaks, craftwork that reflected their intimate knowledge of different kinds of stone. This blending of peoples and traditions has created a culture uniquely suited to this place, between Egypt and the African interior. The Kushites are natural mediators, comfortable with difference, skilled at finding common ground between seemingly incompatible ways of life. They speak multiple languages, their own Meroitic tongue, which has absorbed vocabulary from all the different groups that have joined the kingdom, but also Egyptian for trade, and various local dialects picked up through generations of peaceful interaction with neighbors. In the marketplace of Napata, this diversity is visible in the variety of goods and services available. Here you can find iron workers using techniques developed in the southern forests, potters creating vessels whose shapes reflect desert traditions adapted to river life, weavers combining patterns learned from mountain peoples with materials harvested from river marshes. But the diversity goes deeper than material culture. The Kushites have developed ways of making decisions that honor different traditions while moving toward consensus. When disputes arise, they are resolved not through the imposition of a single legal code, but through careful consideration of all the different perspectives that might be brought to bear on the problem. Community meetings begin not with formal presentations by authorities, but with time for everyone to speak their mind, to share their understanding of the situation, to contribute whatever wisdom they might possess. These discussions can go on for hours, but they are not seen as inefficient. Instead, they are understood as necessary for reaching decisions that everyone can support, that take into account all the different needs and concerns that exist within the community. The religious life of Kush reflects this same inclusive approach. While the gods of Egypt are honored here, they are understood through a lens that incorporates wisdom from many traditions. Amun, the great god adopted from Egypt, is worshipped here not only as the king of the gods, but as the spirit that moves in all natural things, the same spirit that the desert peoples recognized in the wind, that the forest peoples saw in the growing trees, that the river peoples felt in the seasonal floods. The sacred mountain and its teachings, Jebel Barkal, rises from the desert like a natural cathedral, its red sandstone cliffs glowing in the morning light, its distinctive shape visible from great distances across the flat landscape that surrounds it. For the people of Kush, this mountain is more than a geographical landmark. It's the center of their spiritual universe, the place where earth meets sky, and the gods reveal their will to those patient enough to listen. The mountain itself tells a story written in stone, layer upon layer of sediment deposited over millions of years when this land was covered by ancient seas. The Kushites read this story not as scientists would, in terms of geological time and evolutionary processes, but as a spiritual teaching about patience, about the slow accumulation of wisdom, about the way small actions repeated over long periods can create results that seem miraculous. Unlike the elaborate temples of Egypt, with their massive columns and walls covered in hieroglyphic proclamations of royal power, the sacred spaces of Kush are more intimate, more integrated into the natural world. At the base of Jebel Barkal, carved into the living rock, small chambers provide spaces for quiet contemplation and ritual. These spaces are not grand enough to inspire awe through their size, but they create a sense of harmony between human needs and natural forms. The priests who tend these spaces are not distant figures of authority, but members of the community who combine spiritual duties with practical roles. They are healers who know which plants can cure which ailments, teachers who preserve the stories that connect the present generation to their ancestors, keepers of the calendar that governs planting and harvest, observers of the sky who can predict weather patterns and seasonal changes. The religion of Kush, while influenced by Egyptian practices, has its own character, one that emphasizes balance and harmony rather than the triumph of order over chaos. The creation stories told here speak not of gods conquering primordial enemies, but of different forces learning to work together, each contributing its own gifts to the ongoing creation of the world. The gods here are approachable, present in the everyday world of wind and water, growth and harvest. Amun, the great god adopted from Egypt, is worshipped here not as a distant king of the gods, but as a caring father, present in every sunset that paints the mountain red, in every flood that brings life to the fields, in every child's laughter, in every craftsman's skillful work. At dawn, when the first light touches the peak of Jebel Barkal, a small group of people makes its way up the narrow path that winds around the mountain's base. They move slowly, not from lack of energy but out of reverence, stopping at various points to leave small offerings. A handful of grain, a few dates, a drop of precious oil. These are not grand gestures meant to curry favor with demanding gods, but gentle acknowledgments of the interconnectedness of all life. Among them is an elderly priest named Kashta, his hair white as the foam on the river rapids, his movements deliberate and thoughtful. He carries a staff carved from ebony, a wood that comes from the forests far to the south, decorated with symbols that speak of the journey of the soul through life and beyond. The staff itself represents the connection between Kush and the wider world. The wood traveled for months to reach the craftsman who shaped it, passing through many hands, blessed by many traditions, becoming a bridge between different ways of understanding the sacred. For 40 years, Kashta has made this dawn pilgrimage, and he knows every stone of the path, every shift in the morning light as it reveals different aspects of the sacred mountain. He has watched young trees grow to maturity along the path, seen new watercourses carved by occasional rains, observed the slow changes in the rock face as wind and water continue their ancient work of sculpture. As the sun climbs higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and coral, Kashta and his companions reach a small platform carved into the rock face. Here, with the whole kingdom spread out below them like a living map, they perform the simple ritual that begins each day. a moment of grateful silence, a recognition of their place in the great flowing pattern of existence, a quiet commitment to live this day with wisdom and compassion. The view from this platform encompasses not just the physical landscape of Kush, but something of its spiritual geography as well. To the north, the Nile flows toward Egypt, carrying with it trade goods and cultural influences that connect Kush to the wider world. To the south, the river disappears into territories that remain mysterious, lands where different peoples follow different ways, where new knowledge and new challenges await discovery. To the east, the sun rises over hills where gold and iron are mined, where nomadic peoples follow ancient routes between oases, where the landscape teaches lessons about survival and adaptation. To the west, the desert stretches toward other rivers, other kingdoms, other ways of organizing human life. From this high place, the daily activities of the kingdom below appear in their proper perspective, not as isolated events, but as part of a larger pattern, not as ends in themselves, but as contributions to the ongoing creation of a way of life that honors both human needs and divine purposes. Act 2. The Deep Rhythms of Kushite Life. The Goldsmith's Patient Art. In a workshop tucked away in one of Napata's quieter neighborhoods, a craftsman named Shabaka begins his day's work as the first merchant's calls echo through the narrow streets. His workshop is small, just large enough for his tools and workspace, but it has been designed with the same careful attention to function and beauty that characterizes all Kushite craftsmanship. The workshop faces east so that the first light of morning illuminates his work surface without creating harsh shadows that might hide flaws in the metal. High windows catch the changing light throughout the day, directing it onto his workbench through openings that can be adjusted with wooden shutters to control the intensity and angle of illumination. The walls are lined with shelves holding the tools of his trade, hammers so small they fit in the palm of his hand, their heads polished to mirror brightness, their handles carved to fit his grip exactly, punches for creating delicate patterns, each one shaped to produce a specific texture or design element. Files worn smooth by years of use, their surfaces graduated from coarse to incredibly fine, capable of removing metal in amounts measured in particles too small to see. Tweezers and pliers made from the finest iron, tempered to exactly the right hardness so they will hold their shape under pressure, but not be so hard that they crack or chip. Anvils no larger than thumbnails, their surfaces polished to perfection, each one designed for a specific type of shaping or texturing, stone blocks for supporting work while it is being carved or engraved, chosen for their ability to absorb the shock of hammer blows without cracking. The workspace itself is arranged according to principles that have been refined over generations. Tools are positioned not just for convenience, but for the natural flow of movement from one operation to the next. Materials are stored in containers that protect them from dust and moisture while keeping them easily accessible. Lighting is arranged to minimize eye strain during the long hours required for detailed work. But perhaps most importantly, the workshop is designed as a place of meditation as well as work. Shabaka understands that the creation of beautiful objects requires not just technical skill, but a particular state of mind, calm, focused, open to the subtle communications that flow between craftsman and material. Shabaka works with gold, but not in the way one might expect. He is not creating elaborate crowns for kings or massive amulets to display royal power. Instead, his specialty lies in the small, intimate objects that accompany people through their daily lives. Earrings that catch the light as a woman turns her head, bracelets that carry the accumulated warmth of their wearer's skin, pendants that rest close to the heart carrying prayers and memories. The gold he works with comes from the mines to the south, carried north by trading caravans that follow routes established over centuries. But by the time it reaches Shabaka's hands, it has already been transformed multiple times. Raw gold panned from river sands has been refined through processes that can remove even the smallest impurities. It has been alloyed with other metals to give it exactly the right properties of hardness and workability. It has been rolled and drawn into sheets and wires of precise dimensions. Each stage of this preparation represents generations of accumulated knowledge. The miners know which bends in which rivers are most likely to yield gold, which times of year the seasonal floods will expose new deposits, which techniques can separate gold from sand most efficiently. The refiners understand exactly how much heat to apply, which chemical agents will remove specific impurities, how to test the purity of the finished product. This morning, Shabaka is working on a set of earrings for a bride whose wedding will take place at the next full moon. The commission came from the bride's family 3 months ago, giving him time to plan the design, to gather the exactly right materials, to work without the pressure of an impossible deadline. The design is traditional, passed down through families, but each goldsmith adds subtle personal touches that make each piece unique. The basic form recalls the shape of a lotus flower, symbol of renewal and rebirth, appropriate for a woman entering a new phase of life. But Shabaka's version will include details that reflect the bride's personal history, a subtle texture that echoes the pattern of her family's weaving, proportions that complement her particular features, small elements that speak of her interests and aspirations. As he works, tapping gently with his smallest hammer to create a texture like flowing water, Shabaka enters a state that is part concentration, part meditation. His breathing synchronizes with the rhythm of his work. His awareness expands to include not just the piece he is shaping, but the entire workshop, the sounds from the street outside, the quality of light coming through his windows, the subtle variations in the gold's response to his tools. This is not rushed work. The earrings will take several days to complete, and Shabaka will spend hours on details so small that only the wearer will ever notice them. But this attention to invisible beauty is part of what makes Kushite craftsmanship distinctive. The value of an object lies not in its ability to impress observers, but in its capacity to provide pleasure and meaning to those who use it every day. The rhythm of his work synchronizes with his breathing, with the distant sound of the river, with the gentle percussion of other craftsmen in nearby workshops beginning their own daily labors. A coppersmith in the next street is hammering out the shape of a water jar, his blows marking a steady counter rhythm to Shabaka's delicate tapping. Somewhere nearby, a carpenter is smoothing a piece of wood with long, regular strokes of his plane, creating a third voice in the morning's improvised symphony of work. As the morning progresses, the workshop fills with the golden light that gives the city its warm glow. Shabaka pauses occasionally to rest his eyes, looking out through his high window at the slice of street visible beyond. He watches children playing in the dust, their laughter mixing with the calls of vendors and the distant sound of women singing as they work at the river's edge. These sounds become part of his craft, their rhythms influencing the patterns he creates in the soft metal. The children's play teaches him something about spontaneity and joy that he incorporates into the flowing lines of his design. The vendors' calls remind him of the social nature of his work. These earrings will be worn to market, their beauty becoming part of the daily interactions that bind the community together. The gold itself seems to respond to this patient approach. Under Shabaka's gentle pressure, it flows and forms, taking on shapes that seem inevitable, as if they had always existed within the raw metal and needed only his patient coaxing to emerge. He works with the grain of the metal rather than against it, letting its natural properties guide his designs, rather than imposing rigid forms upon it. When the heat of midday makes fine work difficult, Shabaka sets aside his hammer and turns to other tasks, preparing metal for tomorrow's work, organizing his tools, planning future projects. But even these routine activities are performed with the same attention and care that he brings to his most challenging commissions. The scribe's quiet revolution. In a different part of the city, in a room adjoining the main temple complex, a young woman named Meroë is engaged in what might be the most revolutionary act of her time. Though she performs it with the quiet concentration of a meditation, she is learning to write, not in the Egyptian hieroglyphs that have long been used for official documents in Kush, but in a new script that her people are developing to record their own language in their own way. The room where she works was once a storage chamber for temple grain, but it has been converted into a school for the small group of scholars who are developing what will come to be known as the Meroitic script. The conversion required no major construction, just the addition of shelves for scrolls and tablets, mats for students to sit on, oil lamps positioned to provide good light for reading and writing. The Meroitic script represents a quiet declaration of independence that goes far beyond politics into the realm of cultural identity. For centuries, the educated elite of Kush have used Egyptian writing systems, adapting them as best they could to record their own language. But Egyptian hieroglyphs were designed for Egyptian, with its particular sounds and grammatical structures. Using them to write Meroitic was like trying to wear clothes tailored for someone else. Possible, but never quite comfortable, never quite right. Now influenced by their contact with Greek traders and their observation of how different peoples create different solutions to the challenge of recording speech, Kushite scholars are developing something entirely their own. The new script borrows some elements from Egyptian hieroglyphs, others from the alphabetic writing of the Greeks, but combines them in ways that reflect the unique character of the Meroitic language. Meroë sits cross-legged on a woven mat, a wooden board balanced on her knees, practicing the formation of letters that her teacher, an elderly scholar named Spelta, has shown her. The letters are simpler than Egyptian hieroglyphs, more practical, designed for the rapid recording of contracts and letters rather than the elaborate religious and royal inscriptions that dominate Egyptian writing. But the simplicity is deceptive. Each letter has been carefully designed to be quickly written while remaining easily distinguished from every other letter. The shapes flow naturally from the movement of a reed pen held in the traditional way. The spacing between letters and words follows principles that make reading easier and faster. Spelta moves among his students like a gardener tending different plants, offering individual guidance based on each person's particular needs and abilities. He is not a stern taskmaster demanding perfect conformity, but a patient teacher who understands that learning to write is like learning to sing. Each person must find their own voice with the crees within the larger harmony. The room where they work is furnished with the tools of learning, but tools that reflect the practical, unpretentious character of Kushite culture. Reed pens cut from plants that grow along the river, their tips shaped and hardened through techniques passed down through generations of scribes. Cakes of ink made from soot and plant gums, mixed to exactly the right consistency for smooth flow without smudging. Sheets of papyrus traded from Egypt provide the finest writing surface, but students practice on wooden boards covered with a thin layer of clay that can be smoothed and reused countless times. This economy of materials reflects not poverty, but wisdom. Why waste expensive papyrus on practice work when clay boards serve just as well and can be used over and over? The atmosphere is not that of a formal school with rigid hierarchies and competitive pressures. Instead, it feels more like a family gathering, with several students of different ages working at their own pace, helping each other with difficult passages, sharing the joy of discovery when a particularly challenging text suddenly becomes clear. Outside, the day is growing warm, but the thick walls of the temple complex keep the interior cool and quiet. The only sounds are the gentle scratch of pens on papyrus, the soft murmur of students asking questions, and the distant chanting from the main temple, where the morning rituals are being performed. This combination of sounds creates a peaceful backdrop for learning, a sense of being connected to both the intellectual and spiritual life of the community. The students understand that they are not just learning a practical skill, but participating in the preservation and development of their culture. The texts that Amanarena and her fellow students practice with are not grand historical chronicles or religious proclamations. Instead, they work with practical documents, trade agreements that spell out the terms under which merchants from different communities will do business, letters between family members separated by distance, records of harvests and inventories that help administrators plan for the future. This emphasis on the practical aspects of writing reflects the Kushite approach to knowledge. It should serve life, make daily activities easier and more efficient, strengthen the bonds between people rather than create barriers based on specialized knowledge. As she practices forming the letters that will allow her to record her own thoughts in her own language, Amanarena is participating in a quiet cultural revolution. She is part of a generation that will be able to preserve Kushite stories, laws, and wisdom in a form that doesn't depend on foreign scribes or foreign symbols. But the revolution goes deeper than writing systems. The development of Meroitic script is part of a broader movement toward cultural self-determination, a growing confidence that Kushite ways of doing things are not inferior copies of Egyptian or Greek models, but valid alternatives that may in some cases be superior. This cultural confidence appears in many areas of Kushite life during this period. Artists are developing distinctly Kushite styles that incorporate influences from many traditions while remaining recognizably their own. Architects are creating buildings that reflect local materials and climate, rather than simply copying foreign models. Musicians are creating new forms that combine melodies and rhythms from many sources. The Iron Master's deep knowledge. On the outskirts of Napata, where the city gives way to scattered compounds and workshop areas, the sound of hammering rings across the morning air. But this is not the frantic pounding of urgent work. It's the steady, rhythmic sound of iron being shaped with patience and skill. Each blow calculated, each pause deliberate, each phase of the work following ancient patterns refined over generations. Pianki, whom we met earlier as part of the family grinding grain in the pre-dawn darkness, stands before a forge that his grandfather built, using techniques passed down through generations of ironworkers. The Kushites were among the first people in this part of the world to master the secrets of iron, learning to transform the reddish ore found in the hills into tools and weapons superior to anything made from bronze or copper. But this mastery did not come quickly or easily. It required generations of experimentation, of learning from failures, of gradually developing the complex knowledge that transforms earthly ore into useful metal. The process begins not with the dramatic moment when hammer meets anvil, but with the patient preparation of materials that can take days or even weeks. Charcoal must be prepared from specific types of wood, using firing techniques that create the intense heat necessary to smelt iron ore, while producing the minimum amount of ash and impurities. The wood must be cut at the right season, when the sap is down and the moisture content is low. It must be dried for exactly the right amount of time. Too little, and it will not burn hot enough; too much, and it will crumble into useless powder. The firing process itself requires constant attention over several days. The wood must be stacked in precise patterns that allow air to circulate while preventing the fires from burning too hot or too fast. The temperature must be monitored constantly, adjusted by opening or closing vents, adding or reducing fuel. The process cannot be hurried. Attempting to speed it up invariably results in inferior charcoal that will not provide the sustained, even heat that iron smelting requires. The clay for the furnace must be mixed with just the right proportions of sand and organic materials to withstand extreme temperatures without cracking. Too much sand, and the clay will be brittle, shattering when heated. Too little, and it will become soft and deformed, unable to maintain the precise shape necessary for efficient smelting. The organic materials, ground pottery shards, chopped plant fibers, even animal dung, serve multiple purposes. They help the clay hold together during forming and drying. They burn out during firing to create tiny air spaces that allow the clay to expand and contract without cracking, and they provide chemical agents that help the clay resist the corrosive effects of molten metal. Bellows must be crafted from carefully tanned leather, using hides selected for their strength and flexibility. The tanning process itself requires specialized knowledge: which plants provide the best tanning agents, how long to soak the hides, how to work them to achieve exactly the right combination of strength and suppleness. The bellows must be designed to provide a steady stream of air without tearing under the pressure of repeated use. This requires not just good materials, but precise construction: seams that will not leak, valves that will open and close smoothly, chambers sized to deliver the right volume of air at the right pressure. This morning, Pianki is creating a set of farming tools for a family whose old implements have finally worn beyond repair. The commission came to him several weeks ago, giving him time to gather the right materials, to plan the work, to coordinate his schedule with the demands of his other customers. The iron he works with has been smelted from ore brought from the mines in the eastern hills, a journey that takes traders several days through landscapes that shift from river valley to rocky desert and back again. The ore itself was selected by miners who know exactly which rocks contain the highest concentration of workable iron, which veins are likely to yield metal with the right properties for different types of tools. By the time the ore reaches Pianki's forge, it has been refined through processes that concentrate the metal while removing the impurities that would make it brittle or difficult to work. But even refined iron is not a uniform material. Different batches have different characteristics, and an experienced smith learns to read these differences and adjust his techniques accordingly. The transformation from ore to tool requires not just technical skill, but a kind of intuitive understanding of the material that comes only through years of experience. Iron, unlike bronze, cannot be cast in molds. Instead, it must be heated and hammered, folded and reheated, worked and reworked until its internal structure becomes dense and strong. This process cannot be hurried. The metal itself dictates the pace, and a skilled iron worker learns to read the subtle changes in color and texture that indicate when the iron is ready for the next step in its transformation. Too hot, and the metal will burn, becoming brittle and useless. Too cool, and it will not move under the hammer, wasting effort and producing inferior results. As Pianki works, his movements fall into the rhythm that iron workers have followed for generations. The piece is heated until it glows a bright orange-red, then removed from the fire and hammered, while the heat allows the metal to flow and reshape. As the color fades from orange to dark red to black, the piece goes back into the fire, and the cycle begins again. Each cycle transforms the iron a little more, making it stronger, more durable, better suited to its intended purpose. A simple farming tool might go through this cycle dozens of times before it reaches its final form. More complex implements require hundreds of individual heating and hammering operations, each one building on the results of the previous one. The workshop itself reflects this patient approach to craftsmanship. Tools are arranged not for quick access, but for logical progression through the various stages of ironworking. Hammers of different weights and shapes are positioned according to the sequence in which they will be used. Tongs designed for holding work at different stages are placed where they can be reached without interrupting the flow of work. Water barrels stand ready for quenching, but their placement allows for careful timing rather than rushed cooling. The water temperature affects the hardness of the finished piece, and different tools require different degrees of hardness. A plow blade needs to be hard enough to hold a sharp edge, but soft enough to bend rather than break when it hits a stone. A hammerhead needs to be very hard, where it strikes, but softer in the eye, where it fits onto the handle. The anvil, made from a particularly hard stone shaped and polished over many years, sits at the perfect height for long hours of work without strain. Its surface is smooth as glass, free from the nicks and scratches that would mar the finish of delicate work. Around its base, the earth is packed hard from the impact of thousands of hammer blows, testimony to the generations of smiths who have worked in this place. The river trade's gentle current. As the sun reaches its midday height, the river comes alive with a different kind of activity. Long boats, their hulls carved from single massive trees, glide along the current carrying goods and people between the various settlements that dot the Nile, like jewels strung on a silver thread. These boats are the arteries of Kushite commerce, connecting communities separated by days of walking, allowing the exchange of goods and ideas that keeps the kingdom prosperous and culturally vibrant. On one of these boats, a trader named Amanishakato oversees a cargo that tells the story of Kush's place in the wider world. Her boat is perhaps 60 feet long, carved from the trunk of an ebony tree that grew for centuries in the forests of the south before being felled and shaped by master boat builders who understand the subtle art of working with wood. The boat's design reflects generations of accumulated knowledge about river conditions along this stretch of the Nile. The hull is deep enough to carry heavy cargo but shallow enough to navigate the rocky shallows that appear during low water. The bow is shaped to cut through the current efficiently, while the stern provides stability in crosswinds. The sides curve inward slightly to shed water while providing maximum cargo space. Clay jars filled with gold dust occupy one section of the cargo hold, each jar carefully sealed and marked with symbols indicating the purity and origin of its contents. The gold comes from mines scattered throughout the hills east and south of the river, each source producing metal with slightly different characteristics. Experienced traders can tell by looking at a sample of gold dust not only where it came from, but which mine, and even which vein within the mine. The jars themselves represent another layer of specialized knowledge. Made from clay that contains exactly the right proportions of different materials, they are waterproof, resistant to cracking, and designed to stack securely in a moving boat. The seals are made from beeswax, mixed with tree resins, creating a barrier that protects the contents from moisture while remaining easy to remove when the jars reach their destination. Bundles of ebony and ivory fill another part of the hold, products of the African interior that are prized throughout the Mediterranean world. The ebony comes from trees that may be hundreds of years old, cut and shaped by specialists who know exactly which parts of the tree will provide the best material for different purposes. The heartwood, dense and black as night, is reserved for the most valuable items: musical instruments, decorative inlays, ceremonial objects. The sapwood, lighter in both color and weight, is used for everyday items that still benefit from the wood's natural resistance to insects and decay. The ivory represents one of Kush's most valuable exports, but it is harvested according to principles that ensure the continued health of elephant populations. Kushite hunters take only tusks from animals that have died naturally or been killed by other predators. They never hunt elephants merely for their ivory, understanding that these magnificent creatures are more valuable alive than dead. Bags of aromatics, frankincense, and myrrh, collected from trees that grow in the eastern deserts, fill the air with their distinctive scents. These resins are harvested with techniques learned from nomadic peoples who have wandered those harsh landscapes for centuries, following routes between oases that are known only to them. The frankincense trees, twisted and gnarled by wind and drought, produce their precious resin only when carefully tended. The harvesters make shallow cuts in the bark, allowing the resin to seep out and harden over a period of weeks. The process can be repeated several times during the season, but over-harvesting some would damage the trees and reduce future yields. But the cargo also includes goods flowing in the other direction: fine pottery from Egypt, pieces that demonstrate techniques unknown to Kushite potters, glazes that produce colors and textures not achievable with local materials, glass beads from workshops in the Levant, each one a tiny masterpiece of craftsmanship designed to catch and reflect light in ways that delight the eye. Copper ingots that will be alloyed with tin to make bronze for ceremonial objects occupy another section of the hold. While Kush has mastered ironworking, bronze remains the preferred material for certain applications: religious vessels, decorative elements, items that will be displayed rather than used for everyday work. Bolts of fine linen from Egypt, woven to a fineness that Kushite weavers admire but have not yet learned to achieve, represent another type of trade good. These textiles will be worn by wealthy families on special occasions, but they will also be studied by Kushite craftsmen who are constantly learning new techniques and adapting them to local materials and conditions. This two-way flow of goods reflects Kush's position as a bridge between the African interior and the Mediterranean world, a role that requires skills of diplomacy and cultural translation as much as commercial acumen. Kushite traders must understand not only the quality and value of different goods, but also the cultural meanings attached to them, the ceremonial uses they serve, the social status they convey. Amanisha Keto herself embodies this cosmopolitan aspect of Kushite culture. She speaks several languages fluently, switching effortlessly between Meroitic and Egyptian as she discusses terms with different customers, occasionally dropping in words from the various dialects spoken along her trade routes. She can evaluate the quality of goods from a dozen different regions, recognizing subtle differences that indicate superior craftsmanship or materials. More importantly, she maintains trading relationships with partners she may see only once or twice a year, relationships built on trust and mutual respect that survive changes in political conditions, fluctuations in supply and demand, even personal disagreements and misunderstandings. The boat moves at the river's pace, fast enough to make progress but slow enough to allow for the careful observation that successful trading requires. Amanisha Keto watches the changing landscape, noting the condition of crops in the fields, the level of the river, the smoke from cooking fires that indicates thriving settlements. All of this information feeds into the complex calculations that determine where to stop, what goods to offer, how to negotiate prices that are fair to all parties. A successful trader must be part diplomat, part psychologist, part economist, reading not just market conditions but the moods and needs of the people she trades with. As the boat passes other vessels, there are exchanges of greetings, bits of news, information about river conditions ahead. The community of river traders forms an informal network that carries information as well as goods, connecting distant settlements with news of marriages and deaths, successful harvests and political developments, changes in trade routes, and availability of different materials. This flow of information helps maintain the cultural cohesion of the kingdom even across vast distances. Stories and songs travel along the trade routes, carrying with them the values and wisdom of different communities. Technical innovations spread from one settlement to another as traders observe new techniques and carry descriptions of them to places where they might be useful. The evening rituals of community. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, the pace of activity in Napata gradually shifts from the focused energy of productive work to the gentler rhythms of evening. Time for family, for reflection, for the small rituals that mark the end of one day and the quiet preparation for the next. In courtyards throughout the city, families gather as families have gathered for countless generations. The urgent business of the day is finished. Grain ground, iron shaped, accounts tallied, children taught, trades negotiated, goods transported. Now there is time for the sharing of food, the exchange of news, the passing on of stories that connect this day to all the days that came before and all the days that will come after. In the courtyard where Alara and Pienki live with their children, the evening meal is being prepared with the same attention to both practicality and beauty that characterizes all aspects of Kushite life. The food is simple but nourishing. Bread made from the grain Alara ground that morning, its crust golden and its interior soft and fragrant. Vegetables from their small garden, harvested at the peak of ripeness, prepared with techniques that preserve their natural flavors while adding subtle enhancements from herbs and spices. Fish caught in the river that afternoon provide protein and the distinctive taste that comes only from creatures that have lived in the clean, flowing water of the Nile. The fish are prepared simply, grilled over coals that impart a gentle smokiness without overwhelming the delicate flavor of the flesh. But the simplicity of the food is transformed by the way it is shared, with gratitude for the abundance of the river valley, with awareness of their place in the long chain of generations who have found sustenance in this landscape, with recognition that this meal is not just nourishment for the body, but an expression of the bonds that hold families and communities together. As they eat, they talk about the day's events, but in the gentle, unhurried way of people who know they have time to hear each other fully. Pienki describes the progress on his latest project, not as a report of productivity, but as a reflection on the way the iron revealed its grain, the satisfaction of finding the right rhythm between hammer and anvil, the moment when he could feel the metal responding to his guidance. Alara shares news from the market, stories of friends and neighbors, the small dramas and joys that make up the fabric of community life. She tells of a new baby born to a family 3 streets away, of an elderly woman who has recovered from a long illness, of plans for a community celebration to mark the successful completion of a new irrigation channel. Their children, a boy of perhaps 12 and a girl of 8, contribute their own observations from the day, the birds they saw nesting in the acacia trees that line one of the main streets, the patterns they noticed in the way morning light moved across their classroom walls, the games they played with friends during the long afternoon break, when the heat made formal learning impossible. The conversation flows like the river itself, meandering from topic to topic, sometimes deep and serious, sometimes light and playful, always marked by the understanding that each person's words are valuable, that each family member's experience contributes to the wisdom of the whole. As darkness settles over the city, oil lamps begin to flicker in windows and courtyards throughout Napata. The harsh light of midday gives way to this softer illumination, creating intimate spaces within the larger community, allowing for the quiet activities that mark the end of the day. Some families gather to work on small craft projects, parents teaching children the skills they will need as adults. In one courtyard, a father shows his daughter how to select reeds for basket weaving, explaining the subtle differences in texture and flexibility that determine which reeds will work best for different types of baskets. In another, a mother guides her son's hands as he learns to shape clay on a potter's wheel, teaching him not just the physical techniques, but the patience and concentration that pottery requires. The lesson continues long after the formal instruction ends, as the child practices the movements over and over, gradually developing the muscle memory that will allow him to work without conscious thought. Others settle into storytelling, keeping alive the oral traditions that supplement and enrich the written records maintained by the scribes. These stories serve many purposes. They entertain, of course, but they also teach, passing on moral lessons and practical wisdom in forms that are easy to remember and enjoyable to hear. The stories told in Kushite families include tales of the distant past, when the first people learned to work with the river's floods, when the secrets of ironworking were discovered, when the gods established the principles that govern human life. But they also include more recent stories, accounts of grandparents and great-grandparents, family histories that connect the present generation to their immediate ancestors. Some stories are comic, celebrating the human capacity to find humor even in difficult situations. Others are tragic, acknowledging the sorrows that are part of every life while affirming the values that make suffering bearable. Still others are mysterious, exploring questions that have no easy answers, encouraging children to think deeply about the nature of existence. The temple's evening peace. In the temple complex, the evening rituals begin with the lighting of lamps before the shrines of the gods. But these are not elaborate ceremonies requiring specialized priests and complex liturgies. Instead, they are community gatherings where anyone can participate, offering prayers for family members, gratitude for the day's blessings. Requests for guidance in facing tomorrow's challenges. The main temple hall is large enough to accommodate several dozen people, but it is designed to feel intimate rather than overwhelming. Columns carved from local stone support a roof that is high enough to create a sense of spaciousness while low enough to maintain the feeling of human scale. The walls are decorated with painted murals that tell stories from Kushite mythology, but the paintings are rendered in colors and styles that feel warm and welcoming rather than distant and formal. The evening congregation includes people from all walks of life, merchants who have returned from trading expeditions, craftsmen who have finished their day's work, farmers who have come to the city to sell their produce, families who live in the neighborhoods surrounding the temple. There is no separation between priest and congregation, no hierarchy that divides the spiritually advanced from the spiritually ordinary. The rituals themselves are simple, based on the understanding that the gods are present in everyday life and can be approached through ordinary activities, performed with extraordinary attention and care. The lighting of lamps becomes a meditation on the nature of light and darkness, on the daily cycle of rest and activity, on the human need for illumination, both physical and spiritual. The offering of food becomes an opportunity to reflect on the sources of nourishment, on the connection between human beings and the natural world, on the responsibility to share abundance with those who have less. The singing of hymns creates a sense of community while celebrating the beauty of the human voice, raised in harmony with others. The songs that accompany these rituals are ancient, their melodies worn smooth by generations of voices, their words shaped by the accumulated wisdom of centuries. But they are also alive, changing slowly to reflect new circumstances, incorporating new insights while maintaining their connection to the deep traditions that give them power. The melodies themselves seem to emerge from the landscape, echoing the sound of wind in the acacia trees, the rhythm of water lapping against the riverbank, the call and response patterns of birds greeting the dawn and bidding farewell to the day. Singing these songs creates a sense of harmony, not just among the people in the temple, but between the human community and the natural world that sustains it. As the evening progresses, some people remain in the temple for individual prayer and meditation, while others return to their homes and families. There is no pressure to participate in any particular way, no judgment of those who choose different forms of spiritual practice. The temple remains open throughout the night, providing a place of refuge for those who need solitude or comfort, those who are facing difficult decisions or struggling with personal challenges. Oil lamps burn continuously, tended by volunteers who take turns maintaining the sacred fires, ensuring that the light never fails. The night watchers and their quiet vigil. As most of the city settles into sleep, A few individuals begin the quiet tasks that keep the community safe and functioning through the hours of darkness. These night watchers are not guards in the military sense, armed and ready to repel attackers. Instead, they are neighbors, looking out for neighbors, community members who have taken on the responsibility of ensuring that all is well during the vulnerable hours when most people are asleep. The night guards make their slow rounds, following routes that take them through all the residential neighborhoods, past the workshop areas where valuable materials and tools are stored, along the waterfront where boats are moored. Their presence is reassuring rather than threatening, a visible sign that the community cares about the safety and well-being of all its members. These guards are chosen not for their physical strength or military training, but for their judgment and reliability, their ability to distinguish between genuine threats and harmless disturbances, their skill in resolving conflicts through conversation rather than force. They carry no weapons beyond the staffs that help them navigate in darkness, but they are thoroughly familiar with the neighborhood they patrol and know exactly where to find help if it is needed. On the river, fishermen prepare their nets for the night's work, taking advantage of the cooler air and the feeding patterns of fish that are more active after sunset. These night fishermen represent one of the most ancient professions along the Nile, and their techniques have been refined over countless generations. Their boats are different from the large vessels used for trade, smaller, quieter, designed to move through the water without disturbing the fish they seek to catch. The boats are equipped with nets of various sizes and mesh patterns, each type suited to catching particular species under particular conditions. The fishermen work in teams, coordinating their movements with hand signals and whispered words, spreading their nets across promising areas and waiting with infinite patience for the subtle signs that indicate fish are present. The work requires not just technical skill, but an intimate knowledge of the river's moods and patterns. They know which areas are likely to be productive at different times of the night, how the phases of the moon affect fish behavior, how changes in weather patterns influence the movement of different species. This knowledge is not written in books, but passed down through families, shared among colleagues, accumulated through years of careful observation. In the workshop areas, the furnaces and forges that cannot be allowed to cool completely are tended by craftsmen who take turns maintaining the careful balance of heat and fuel that keeps the fires alive for tomorrow's work. This night tending is not just practical, but also meditative, a time for quiet reflection on the day's work and the gradual formation of plans for tomorrow's projects. The night shift workers move slowly through their tasks, checking temperatures, adding fuel as needed, adjusting ventilation to maintain optimal conditions. They work by the light of oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the workshop walls, creating an atmosphere that is both peaceful and purposeful. The astronomical observers, inheritors of traditions that stretch back to the earliest river civilizations, maintain their patient vigil on rooftops and temple platforms. With instruments as simple as calibrated sticks and as sophisticated as carefully aligned stone markers, they track the movements of stars and planets, maintaining the calendar that governs agricultural and religious activities. These observers have learned to read the night sky like a vast book, recognizing the subtle signs that indicate changing seasons, predicting the coming of the annual flood, identifying the optimal times for planting different crops. Their work requires not just technical knowledge, but a kind of intuitive understanding of the relationships between celestial events and earthly conditions. They maintain detailed records of their observations, creating archives that allow them to identify long-term patterns and cycles. These records serve not just practical purposes, but also spiritual ones, helping the community understand its place in the larger cosmos, providing evidence of the divine order that governs all existence. The work of the night watchers is largely invisible to the rest of the community, but it provides the foundation for everything else that happens during the daylight hours. The security they provide allows others to sleep peacefully. The maintenance they perform ensures that the tools and materials needed for the next day's work are ready and available. The observations they make provide the information needed for planning and decision-making. These night watchers are the guardians of continuity, the people who ensure that the patient rhythms of Kushite life continue unbroken through the vulnerable hours of darkness. They are not heroes in the dramatic sense, but they are essential, the quiet keepers of the community's well-being, the ones who make it possible for others to rest secure in the knowledge that someone is watching, someone is tending the fires, someone is reading the stars. Act 3. The quiet triumph of Kushite civilization. The builders of eternal rest in the early morning light several days' journey south of Napata. A different kind of construction project unfolds with the same patient deliberation that characterizes all Kushite endeavors. At Meroë, in the curve of the river where the desert meets the fertile floodplain, teams of workers are engaged in building pyramids, but pyramids unlike any others in the ancient world. The site itself has been chosen with the same careful attention to both practical and spiritual considerations that marks all important Kushite construction. The location provides good drainage during the flood season while remaining accessible to boats carrying materials and supplies. The underlying rock is solid enough to support substantial structures while being soft enough to allow for the excavation of burial chambers. More importantly, the site offers views of both the river valley that represents life and abundance and the desert that symbolizes eternity and the afterworld. The pyramids built here will serve not just as tombs, but as permanent links between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors. The pyramids of Kush are smaller than their famous Egyptian counterparts, but they are built with a different philosophy that reflects the distinctive values of Kushite civilization. Where the Egyptian pyramids proclaim the godlike power of individual pharaohs, the Kushite pyramids speak of a more democratic view of death and remembrance. They are built not just for kings, but for queens, nobles, and even wealthy merchants who have contributed to the community's well-being during their lifetimes. The size and elaboration of each pyramid reflects not just the social status of the person buried there, but also their contributions to the common good, their reputation for wisdom and generosity, their role in maintaining the cultural traditions that bind the community together. The master builder overseeing this project is a woman named Napata, one of many women who hold positions of authority and respect in Kushite society. She learned her craft from her father and grandfather, but she has also added innovations of her own, drawing on techniques observed during trading expeditions to distant lands and adapting them to local materials and conditions. Napata's approach to construction reflects the Kushite preference for working with natural materials rather than against them. Instead of quarrying massive blocks from distant sites and dragging them across the desert at enormous cost and human effort, she uses local sandstone that can be cut to precise dimensions while remaining manageable for human workers. The blocks being fitted into place this morning are made of carefully selected local sandstone, cut to fit precisely, but without the overwhelming monumentality of northern examples. Each block is shaped with consideration for the workers who must handle it, sized for human strength rather than superhuman ambition, designed to fit together in ways that distribute weight evenly and create structures that will endure for centuries. The workers themselves represent the diversity of Kushite society, local craftsmen working alongside specialists, brought in for their particular skills, young people learning trades under the guidance of experienced masters, women and men working together on tasks that require different kinds of strength and precision. There is singing as they work, not the desperate chants of slaves driven by overseers, but the work songs of free people who take pride in creating something beautiful and lasting. The songs serve multiple purposes. They coordinate effort when teams must work together. They maintain morale during long hours of demanding work, and they create a sense of shared purpose that transforms individual labor into collective achievement. The melodies of these work songs are traditional, passed down through generations of builders, but the words are often improvised, reflecting current events, celebrating individual achievements, expressing hopes for the future. The songs become part of the structure itself, their rhythms influencing the pace of work, their spirit infusing the stones with something of the humanity of those who shaped them. The burial chambers being constructed within these pyramids reflect Kushite beliefs about death and the afterlife, beliefs that differ in subtle but important ways from Egyptian concepts of the journey beyond death. Unlike the elaborate tomb paintings of Egypt with their detailed instructions for navigating the challenges of death, Kushite burial chambers are simpler, more intimate, more focused on the continuing connection between the dead and the living. The walls are decorated with geometric patterns and symbols that speak of the individual's life and contributions, but also of their connection to the ongoing life of the community. Instead of scenes of judgment and trial, the decorations emphasize themes of reunion and continuity, the idea that death is not an ending, but a transformation, not a separation, but a different kind of participation in the life of the community. The objects that will accompany the dead on their journey are chosen not to demonstrate wealth and power, but to provide comfort and companionship in the afterlife. Personal ornaments that carried special meaning during life, favorite tools that represent the person's contribution to the community, small sculptures of servants and animals that represent not domination, but affection and companionship. These burial goods tell stories of lives lived in relationship with others, of identities defined not by what one owned, but by how one contributed to the common good. A farmer might be buried with miniature farming implements and models of the fields he cultivated. A merchant might be accompanied by tiny boats and samples of the goods he traded. A craftsman might rest with small versions of the tools he used and examples of the objects he created. The construction process itself becomes a form of community ritual, with different groups taking responsibility for different aspects of the work. Families contribute labor and materials according to their ability, but also according to their relationship to the person being honored. Friends and colleagues share memories and stories while they work, creating an oral history that becomes part of the pyramid's invisible foundation. The scribe's living library. In the royal library at Napata, where scrolls and tablets preserve the accumulated knowledge of generations, a group of scribes is engaged in a project that represents the quiet maturation of Kushite civilization. They are creating a comprehensive record of their kingdom's laws, customs, and administrative practices, not as a means of control, but as a gift to future generations. The library itself reflects the Kushite approach to learning and knowledge. Instead of a single grand hall designed to impress visitors with its magnificence, it consists of a series of interconnected rooms, each designed for different types of work and study. Some rooms are equipped with tables and good lighting for detailed copying work. Others provide comfortable seating for reading and research. Still others serve as meeting spaces where scholars can discuss their findings and share insights. The head scribe, an elderly man named Atlanersa has spent his entire career documenting the subtle wisdom of Kushite governance. Unlike the rigid legal codes of some civilizations, with their emphasis on punishment and deterrence, Kushite law is based on principles of balance and restoration rather than retribution. When conflicts arise between individuals or groups, the goal is not to establish who is right and who is wrong, but to find ways to repair relationships and restore harmony to the community. This approach requires not just rules, but wisdom. Not just procedures, but understanding of human nature and social dynamics. The scribes work in rooms filled with soft light from high windows, surrounded by the tools of their trade. Reed pens cut to different weights for different kinds of writing, inks made from various materials to create different colors and degrees of permanence, rulers and compasses for creating the geometric designs that separate different sections of text. As they work, they consult with elders and specialists, making sure that their written records capture not just the formal procedures, but the wisdom behind them. This is not a mechanical copying of established texts, but a creative interpretation that preserves the spirit of Kushite justice while making it accessible to future administrators who may face different circumstances. The process of consultation involves extensive interviews with people who have experience in different areas of community life. Judges are asked not just to explain the procedures they follow, but to share the reasoning behind their decisions, the principles that guide their thinking, the lessons they have learned from difficult cases. Merchants provide information about trade practices, explaining not just the formal rules that govern commerce, but the informal customs that make trade relationships sustainable over time. Farmers share their knowledge of land use and water rights, helping to document the complex systems that prevent conflicts over scarce resources. Craftsmen contribute their understanding of apprenticeship systems and quality standards, preserving the knowledge that ensures the continuation of technical skills from generation to generation. Teachers explain their methods and objectives, helping to record the educational practices that shape young minds and character. The texts being produced cover every aspect of community life. Regulations for trade and commerce that balance the needs of merchants with the rights of consumers. Guidelines for agricultural practices that preserve the long-term fertility of the soil. Principles for resolving disputes between neighbors that emphasize understanding over victory. But perhaps most importantly, the scribes are recording the stories that give meaning to these laws and customs. Tales of wise judges who found creative solutions to seemingly impossible conflicts. Examples of communities that overcame serious challenges through cooperation and patience. Accounts of individuals who sacrifice personal gain for the common good. These stories serve as more than entertainment or illustration. They provide models for behavior, templates for thinking about difficult problems, inspiration for maintaining ethical standards, even when it would be easier to compromise. They embody the values that make Kushite civilization distinctive, preserving them in forms that can be understood and appreciated by future generations. The work of creating this legal and cultural archive proceeds slowly, with careful attention to both accuracy and accessibility. The scribes understand that they are not just recording information, but preserving a way of life, not just documenting procedures, but transmitting wisdom. Each text is reviewed multiple times by different specialists to ensure that it accurately reflects current practices while remaining comprehensible to readers who may not have direct experience with the situations it describes. The language used is formal enough to convey the seriousness of the subject matter while remaining clear and straightforward. The merchant's web of trust. As the kingdom reaches the height of its prosperity, the merchant networks that connect Kush to the wider world become increasingly sophisticated. But this sophistication is built on principles that reflect the deeper values of Kushite society: fairness, patience, and the understanding that sustainable prosperity must be shared prosperity. In the great market of Meroë, which has grown to become the kingdom's principal commercial center, traders from across Africa and the Mediterranean gather to exchange goods and ideas. The market itself has evolved over centuries from a simple riverside trading post to a complex commercial center that serves multiple functions within the kingdom's economy. The market is designed not for maximum efficiency in the modern sense, but for maximum fairness and sustainability. The layout provides equal access to prime locations for merchants of different sizes and resources. Standardized measures and weights ensure that all transactions are conducted honestly. Establish procedures for resolving disputes, provide rapid and fair resolution of conflicts. The physical infrastructure of the market reflects Kushite values in its design and construction. Instead of cramped stalls that maximize the number of vendors who can be accommodated, the market provides spacious areas where merchants can display their goods properly and customers can examine them carefully. Instead of temporary structures that must be rebuilt frequently, permanent buildings provide protection from weather and security for valuable goods. Water is available throughout the market from wells and cisterns that are maintained as community resources. Shade is provided by trees and constructed shelters that create comfortable spaces for negotiation and social interaction. Waste disposal systems keep the market clean and healthy, preventing the accumulation of refuse that could create problems for vendors and customers alike. The merchant guilds that organize this trade have developed systems of mutual support that extend far beyond simple commercial cooperation. Guild members help each other through difficult times, sharing both profits and losses according to principles that ensure the survival and prosperity of the trading community as a whole. When a merchant faces unexpected difficulties, illness in the family, loss of a cargo to storms or bandits, problems with suppliers or customers, other guild members provide assistance that allows the business to continue. This assistance is not charity, but investment, based on the understanding that the prosperity of each merchant contributes to the prosperity of all. New members are not simply admitted based on wealth or connections, but must demonstrate not only commercial competence, but also ethical reliability. The guild provides training in technical skills, how to evaluate the quality of different goods, how to negotiate fair prices, how to manage the logistics of long-distance trade, but also in the less tangible skills of building and maintaining trust. Prospective merchants spend years as apprentices, learning not just the mechanics of trade, but the relationships and customs that make commerce possible. They observe experienced traders in action, gradually taking on more responsibility as they demonstrate their competence and reliability. The routes that connect Kush to the outside world carry more than goods. They carry ideas, technologies, and cultural practices that enrich Kushite civilization without overwhelming it. Kushite merchants learn techniques from other cultures and adapt them to local conditions, bringing back innovations that improve life in their home communities. New crops and livestock breeds are introduced through trade networks, but only after careful testing to ensure that they will thrive in local conditions without displacing valuable indigenous species. New artistic motifs and musical instruments are incorporated into Kushite culture, but in ways that complement rather than replace traditional forms. New philosophical and religious ideas are discussed and debated, but they are evaluated according to their compatibility with existing values and their contribution to community well-being. The result is a culture that is both cosmopolitan and distinctly Kushite, open to innovation but rooted in time-tested principles. The merchant networks also serve as channels for diplomatic communication, carrying messages between communities and kingdoms that might otherwise have little contact. Kushite merchants serve as informal ambassadors, representing their civilization through their behavior and character as much as through their commercial activities. The Queen's wisdom in governance. In the later centuries of the kingdom's existence, Kush is increasingly ruled by powerful queens who bring their own distinctive approaches to governance. These are not queens who rule as regents for absent or minor sons, but sovereign rulers in their own right, chosen for their wisdom and leadership abilities rather than their birth or marriage connections. The tradition of female rule in Kush reflects deeper cultural values that recognize leadership ability wherever it appears, regardless of gender. The selection process for rulers emphasizes practical skills, the ability to make good decisions under pressure, to build consensus among different groups, to represent the kingdom effectively in dealings with foreign powers. Queen Amanirenas, ruling from Meroë, in the time when Roman legions threaten from the north, demonstrates the mature confidence of Kushite civilization in its dealing with external challenges. When Roman forces invade Kushite territory, she does not meet them with desperate resistance or immediate submission, but with the patient diplomatic skills that have long characterized Kushite statecraft. Her approach to the Roman threat illustrates the sophistication of Kushite political thinking. Rather than viewing the conflict as a simple struggle between competing powers, she sees it as an opportunity to establish a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect and beneficial exchange. She is willing to fight when necessary. Kushite forces under her command prove more than capable of holding their own against Roman legions, but her goal is not victory in the conventional sense, but the creation of conditions that allow both civilizations to flourish without constant conflict. The military campaigns that occur during this period are conducted according to principles that minimize civilian casualties and avoid the destruction of productive resources. Kushite forces target military objectives while protecting farms, workshops, and residential areas. Prisoners are treated according to standards that preserve their dignity and allow for eventual reintegration into peaceful society. The negotiations that eventually end the Roman threat take place not in the grand style of formal diplomacy, with elaborate ceremonies and rigid protocols, but in the patient, thorough manner that characterizes all-important Kushite decision-making. Representatives from both sides meet repeatedly over a period of months, exploring different possibilities, consulting with their respective communities, gradually building the understanding and trust necessary for a lasting agreement. The process cannot be hurried. Attempting to force quick decisions would only create superficial agreements that would collapse under pressure. The meetings take place in various locations along the border between the two territories, sometimes in Roman camps, sometimes in Kushite towns, sometimes in neutral locations that belong to neither side. This flexibility in venue reflects the Kushite understanding that successful negotiations require the right atmosphere, settings where all parties can feel comfortable and speak freely. The discussions cover not just the immediate issues that triggered the conflict, but the underlying concerns and interests that will determine whether any agreement can be sustained over time. Roman representatives express concerns about securing their borders and maintaining reliable access to trade routes. Kushite negotiators emphasize their need for independence and their right to control their own resources. But the conversations also explore possibilities for cooperation that could benefit both sides. Roman technology and organizational skills could help improve Kushite infrastructure and administration. Kushite knowledge of local conditions and trade relationships could help Romans develop more effective policies in their African territories. The final treaty that emerges from these negotiations reflects Kushite values in its structure and provisions. It establishes clear boundaries that both sides can respect based on natural features and traditional territories rather than arbitrary lines drawn for administrative convenience. It creates mechanisms for peaceful resolution of future disputes, procedures that emphasize negotiation and compromise rather than the threat or use of force. It opens opportunities for beneficial trade and cultural exchange, while protecting the independence and integrity of both civilizations. Perhaps most importantly, it acknowledges the legitimacy and value of both cultures, rejecting the assumption that one way of organizing society is inherently superior to all others. The treaty represents not a victory of one side over the other, but a mutual recognition of shared interests and complementary strengths. The artisans accumulated excellence. As we follow the long arc of Kushite civilization, we see how the patient accumulation of small excellences creates achievements that surpass more dramatic but less sustainable accomplishments. In the workshops of Meroë, where craftsmanship has been refined over centuries, artisans create objects of extraordinary beauty and durability that embody the values and wisdom of their civilization. The pottery produced in these workshops combines technical excellence with aesthetic sophistication, but more importantly, it reflects a deep understanding of how objects can enhance daily life. Each vessel is designed not just to be beautiful, but to be perfectly suited to its function, shaped according to principles that have been refined over generations of experimentation and improvement. Water jars are designed to keep their contents cool even in the heat of summer, using shapes and wall thicknesses that take advantage of evaporative cooling while minimizing water loss. The clay is prepared with additives that increase its porosity just enough to allow cooling while preventing seepage that would waste precious water. Cooking pots distribute heat evenly, preventing hot spots that could burn food while ensuring that heat penetrates throughout the contents. The shapes are designed for efficient use of fuel, allowing maximum cooking with minimum fire. Handles and rims are positioned and shaped for comfortable use by cooks who may spend hours each day preparing meals for large families. Storage containers protect their contents from moisture and pests while remaining accessible for daily use. The lids fit precisely, creating seals that keep out insects and rodents while allowing for easy opening. Interior surfaces are smooth enough to prevent the accumulation of residues that could contaminate stored food. But beyond their practical function, these vessels are also works of art, decorated with patterns and designs that reflect both individual creativity and cultural traditions. The decorations are not merely ornamental, but convey meanings that connect each object to larger patterns of belief and understanding. Geometric designs echo the mathematical principles that govern natural growth and cosmic order. Animal motifs celebrate the connection between human beings and the natural world. Abstract patterns suggest spiritual concepts that cannot be expressed directly in representational form. The metalworkers of Meroë have achieved similar mastery in their domain, creating tools and weapons that are superior to anything produced elsewhere in the ancient world. But they have also developed techniques for creating decorative objects that combine different metals and patterns of extraordinary complexity and beauty. These pieces require not just technical skill, but artistic vision, the ability to imagine how different materials will interact to create unified works of art. Gold and silver are combined with copper and iron in designs that exploit the distinctive properties of each metal while creating harmonious compositions that transcend the sum of their parts. The techniques involved in creating these complex metalwork pieces represent the culmination of centuries of experimentation and refinement. Different metals must be heated to precisely the right temperatures, shaped using tools designed for specific operations, joined using methods that create invisible but permanent bonds. The finished pieces serve multiple functions. They are beautiful objects that provide aesthetic pleasure, they are status symbols that indicate the owner's position in society, and they are repositories of technical knowledge that preserve important skills for future generations. The textile workers of Meroë, building on traditions brought from various parts of Africa, have developed weaving techniques that produce fabrics prized throughout the ancient world. These textiles combine beauty with practicality, creating clothing and household furnishings that are perfectly adapted to the climate and lifestyle of their users. The raw materials used in these textiles come from a variety of sources, each chosen for its distinctive properties. Cotton grown in irrigated fields along the river provides fibers that are soft and absorbent, ideal for clothing worn in hot climates. Linen made from flax creates strong, durable fabrics suitable for heavy use. Wool from sheep and goats raised in the highlands provides insulation and weather resistance. But the quality of Kushite textiles depends not just on raw materials, but on the sophisticated techniques used to prepare and weave them. Fibers are selected and processed to maximize their strength and uniformity. Dyes are created from plants and minerals that produce colors of exceptional intensity and permanence. The weaving itself is performed on looms that represent generations of technological refinement, devices that allow for precise control over tension and spacing while remaining simple enough to be maintained and operated by individual craftsmen. The patterns woven into these fabrics reflect mathematical principles and aesthetic sensibilities that transform functional objects into works of art. But perhaps most importantly, these craftsmen and women have created systems for passing on their knowledge that ensure continuous improvement over generations. Apprenticeship programs balance technical training with broader education, ensuring that new craftsmen understand not just how to perform specific operations, but why those operations are important. Guild organizations share innovations while maintaining standards, creating networks of mutual support that encourage experimentation while preventing the dilution of quality that can occur when competition becomes destructive rather than constructive. Cultural values honor craftsmanship as a form of wisdom rather than mere skill, recognizing that the creation of beautiful and useful objects is one of the highest human achievements, worthy of the same respect accorded to other forms of intellectual and spiritual accomplishment. The farmer's deep wisdom. At the foundation of all this achievement lies the quiet mastery of agriculture that allows Kush to sustain a sophisticated civilization in a challenging environment. Along the Nile and in the seasonal streams that flow from the eastern highlands, Kushite farmers have developed techniques that work with natural cycles rather than against them, creating systems of production that remain sustainable over centuries. Their agricultural calendar is precisely attuned to the rhythms of flood and drought, planting and harvest that govern life in this part of the world. But this attunement is not passive. It represents the accumulated observations of generations of farmers who have learned to read subtle signs in the landscape, the sky, and the behavior of animals to predict optimal timing for various agricultural activities. The farmers know exactly when the first rains are likely to arrive, not just in terms of months or weeks, but down to the specific combinations of weather conditions that precede precipitation. They can predict the intensity and duration of the rainy season by observing cloud formations, wind patterns, and the behavior of migratory birds. This knowledge allows them to plan their planting schedules to take maximum advantage of available moisture while avoiding the risks associated with late or early storms. Different crops are planted at different times, according to their water requirements and growth patterns, creating a sequence of agricultural activities that spreads labor demands evenly throughout the growing season. The crops they grow represent a careful balance between indigenous plants adapted to local conditions and useful species brought from other regions through trade and cultural exchange. Sorghum and millet, perfectly suited to the variable rainfall of the region, provide reliable staples that can be stored for long periods without spoiling. These grains have been selected over countless generations for their ability to thrive in difficult conditions, their resistance to insects and diseases, and their nutritional value. Different varieties are grown for different purposes, some for immediate consumption, others for long-term storage, still others for specific culinary applications. Date palms and various fruit trees create oases of productivity in areas that might otherwise be marginal for agriculture. These trees provide not just food, but also materials for construction and crafts, creating multiple sources of value from single plantings. The palms in particular represent long-term investments, taking years to reach productive maturity, but then yielding for decades. Vegetables and legumes grown in irrigated gardens provide dietary variety and essential nutrients while also contributing to soil fertility through nitrogen fixation. The gardens are carefully designed to make efficient use of limited water resources while providing maximum yields of fresh food throughout the growing season. But perhaps most importantly, Kushite farmers have developed soil management practices that maintain fertility over long periods without depleting the land's productive capacity. They understand the importance of crop rotation, alternating plants that consume different nutrients and contribute different benefits to soil structure and fertility. Animal manures are carefully composted and applied according to schedules that maximize their benefits while minimizing the risk of burning crops with excessive nutrients. Green manures, crops grown specifically to be plowed under, provide organic matter and nutrients while also helping to control weeds and pests. Terracing and water management techniques prevent erosion while maximizing the use of available moisture. Hillsides are modified with stone and earth barriers that slow runoff and allow water to penetrate deeply into the soil. Channels and basins direct floodwaters to areas where they can be stored for later use. These techniques require not just technical knowledge, but also community cooperation, since water management systems often extend across multiple farms and require coordinated maintenance. The social institutions that make such cooperation possible represent achievements as significant as the technical innovations themselves. The farmers who practice these techniques are not simply following traditional methods without understanding, but are constantly observing and experimenting, making small modifications that improve yields or reduce risks. Their knowledge is both conservative and innovative, rooted in time-tested principles, but open to beneficial changes. The children's inheritance. In the late afternoon light that slants through the windows of a school in Meroë, children are engaged in learning that reflects the values and priorities of their civilization. But this learning is not the rote memorization that characterizes education in many ancient societies. Instead, it emphasizes understanding, creativity, and the development of judgment that will allow these children to contribute effectively to their community's continued prosperity. The classroom itself reflects Kushite educational philosophy in its design and organization. Instead of rigid rows of desks facing a single authority figure, the furniture can be rearranged to accommodate different types of learning activities. Small groups can work on collaborative projects while individuals pursue independent study. The children work with various materials that engage different senses and learning styles. Clay tablets for practicing writing allow for mistakes to be corrected easily while providing the tactile experience of forming letters. Counting stones and measuring devices make mathematical concepts concrete and understandable. Maps and diagrams help children understand the geography and history of their world, showing them their place in the larger patterns of trade and cultural exchange that connect Kush to distant lands. But the maps also emphasize local knowledge, the location of water sources, the boundaries of different soil types, the routes used by herders and traders. The teacher, a middle-aged woman named Meroë, moves among the students, like a gardener tending different plants, offering individual guidance, asking questions that encourage deeper thinking, helping each child discover their particular talents and interests. She understands that her role is not to fill empty minds with predetermined knowledge, but to nurture the natural curiosity and intelligence that each child possesses. Different children learn in different ways and at different rates, and effective teaching requires flexibility and sensitivity to individual needs. The curriculum balances practical skills with broader understanding, preparing children for productive adult lives while also developing their capacity for continued learning and growth. Children learn to read and write in their own language, using the Meroitic script that allows them to record their thoughts and experiences in forms that preserve their distinctive cultural perspective. Mathematical instruction emphasizes not just calculation, but problem solving, teaching children to analyze situations, identify relevant factors, and develop creative solutions. The problems used as examples are drawn from real-life situations that children might encounter as adults, calculating the amount of seed needed for a field of given size, determining fair prices for traded goods, planning the construction of a building. But the children also learn about the natural world around them, studying the plants and animals that share their environment, understanding the cycles of weather and season that govern agricultural activities, observing the stars and planets that provide guidance for navigation and timekeeping. History instruction focuses not just on the deeds of rulers and the outcomes of wars, but on the development of their civilization's distinctive institutions and practices. Children learn how their ancestors developed techniques for working with iron, how they created writing systems suited to their own language, how they established trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Perhaps most importantly, they learn about the principles that guide ethical behavior, the values that have allowed their civilization to prosper over centuries. These lessons are not presented as abstract rules, but as practical wisdom that can guide decision-making in concrete situations. The children study examples of people who made difficult choices based on principle rather than immediate advantage, for example, who sacrificed personal gain for the common good, who found creative solutions to conflicts that seemed irresolvable. These examples provide models for behavior while also demonstrating the practical benefits of ethical conduct. The school day includes time for physical activities that develop strength and coordination, while also teaching lessons about cooperation and fair play. Games and sports are structured to include children of different ages and abilities, emphasizing participation and improvement rather than competition and winning. Artistic activities allow children to express their creativity while also learning traditional techniques and patterns. They work with clay and fibers, learning basic crafts skills while also developing aesthetic sensibilities. They sing traditional songs and learn traditional dances, connecting with their cultural heritage while also adding their own creative contributions. The children who are learning in this school will grow up to become the merchants and craftsmen, the farmers and administrators, the artists and scholars who will carry Kushite civilization into the future. The education they receive emphasizes not just knowledge and skills, but the wisdom to use them well. The understanding that individual achievement is meaningful only when it contributes to the common good. Resolution and the river's eternal teaching. The Sunset Kingdom's golden hour. As our long journey through the daily life of ancient Kush draws toward its close, we find ourselves once again in the golden hour before sunset, when the light grows soft and the day's heat begins to ease. Across the kingdom, from the great cities of Napata and Meroë to the smallest farming villages along the river, people are pausing in their work to appreciate this daily moment of beauty and transition. The sun, now low in the western sky, paints everything it touches with warm gold. The mud brick walls of houses that have sheltered families for generations, the water jars standing in shaded courtyards, the tools laid aside until tomorrow's work begins. This is the light that has blessed the end of countless days in Kush, the same gentle radiance that has marked the completion of work well done for century after century. In the goldsmith's workshop, Shabaka sets aside his delicate hammer and examines the earrings he has been creating. In the soft evening light, the gold seems to glow with its own inner fire, each carefully crafted curve and texture capturing and reflecting the rays of the setting sun. Tomorrow he will add the final details, but tonight the metal rests, holding within its formed beauty all the patience and skill of its making. At the scribe's school, Amanarainus carefully sets aside her practice tablet, the day's lessons in Meroitic writing now completed. The new letters she has learned dance in her memory like living things, each one a key that will unlock new possibilities for preserving and sharing the thoughts of her people. The revolution she is part of continues quietly, changing her world one carefully formed symbol at a time. In his forge, Pianki allows the fire to burn down to glowing coals, the iron he has been shaping now cool and solid in its new form. The farming tools he has created will help feed families, will turn earth and harvest grain, will participate in the endless cycle of planting and growth that sustains all life along the river. The kingdom we have explored together was never the largest or most powerful in the ancient world. Its armies never conquered vast territories. Its kings never built monuments that dominated the landscape for miles around. But in its quiet way, it achieved something perhaps more precious and certainly more lasting. It created a civilization based on balance, wisdom, and respect for the dignity of every person. The Kushites learned to live well in their particular place on earth, to work with the rhythms of river and season rather than against them, to build communities that supported individual excellence while maintaining social harmony. They developed technologies and artistic traditions, governmental systems, and educational practices that served human needs rather than abstract ideologies. Their approach to trade and diplomacy emphasized mutual benefit rather than domination, creating networks of exchange that enriched all participants rather than systems of exploitation that benefited only the powerful. Their legal system sought healing and restoration rather than punishment, understanding that the goal of justice is not to establish dominance, but to repair relationships and restore community harmony. Their religious practices honored the sacred in everyday life, rather than separating the spiritual from the practical, finding divine presence in the work of their hands, the rhythm of the seasons, the flow of the river that sustained all life. Their educational system nurtured wisdom and character as well as knowledge and skill, preparing children not just for productive work, but for ethical citizenship. Perhaps most remarkably, they created a society in which both men and women could achieve positions of leadership and respect, in which people of different backgrounds could find acceptance and opportunity, in which individual achievement was valued, but never at the expense of community well-being. The river's endless teaching. The Nile that flows through Kush carries more than water. It carries the accumulated wisdom of all the civilizations that have grown up along its banks, each adding their own understanding to the great flow of human experience. But each civilization learns its own lessons from the river's example. And the lessons that Kush learned were particularly well-suited to creating a sustainable way of life. From the river's patient persistence flowing around obstacles rather than trying to overcome them, through force, the Kushites learned the value of flexibility and adaptation. When they encountered problems, droughts that reduced harvests, floods that damaged buildings, conflicts with neighbors, they responded not with desperate resistance but with creative accommodation, finding ways to work with changed conditions rather than trying to force conditions to remain unchanged. From the river's seasonal rhythms of flood and recession, they learned to work with natural cycles rather than trying to impose artificial schedules. They understood that there are times for planting and times for harvesting, times for building and times for resting, times for activity and times for reflection. This understanding helped them avoid the exhaustion that comes from trying to maintain the same pace of activity throughout all seasons. From the river's life-giving properties, they learned that true wealth comes not from accumulating possessions, but from nurturing growth and abundance. The river does not hoard its water, but shares it freely with all who need it, supporting not just human life, but the entire ecosystem of plants and animals that depend on its flow. The river taught them that strength can be gentle, that power can be used to nurture rather than to dominate, that the most lasting achievements are often the quietest ones. It showed them that water, the softest of substances, can carve canyons through solid rock if it persists long enough, that patience and consistency can accomplish more than dramatic gestures. These lessons shaped every aspect of Kushite civilization. Their approach to governance, which emphasized consensus and cooperation rather than command and control. Their methods of education, which nurtured individual development while strengthening community bonds. Their practices of craftsmanship, which valued excellence for its own sake rather than as a means of displaying superiority. They created a culture that valued depth over breadth, quality over quantity, wisdom over cleverness, character over reputation. They understood that the most important victories are often invisible ones: the development of patience, the accumulation of skill, the gradual creation of beauty in objects so humble they might escape notice. The craftsman's perfect tool. In his workshop in Napata, as the day's work comes to an end, the ironworker Pianki examines the tools he has created during his lifetime. Each one represents not just hours of careful work, but accumulated understanding of his materials and his craft. Years of learning how to coax iron into forms that serve human needs with simple efficiency. As he looks at these tools, hammers whose balance makes work easier, knives whose edges hold their sharpness through long use, farming implements that turn soil without excessive effort, Pianki sees in them something more than mere objects. He sees the embodiment of values and principles that have guided his life and his work. The patience required to heat and reheat the iron until its structure is perfectly refined. The attention to detail that ensures each tool will perform its function reliably for years of use. The balance between strength and flexibility that makes a blade both durable and effective. The understanding that the best tools are often the simplest ones, designed not to impress observers, but to serve their users faithfully. These tools will outlast the man who made them. They will pass to his children and his apprentices, carrying with them not just practical utility, but the wisdom embedded in their creation. Each time they are used, they will teach their users something about the right way to approach work and life, with patience, with attention to quality, with respect for materials and processes, with understanding that the best achievements are often the least dramatic ones. In this transmission of wisdom through objects and practices, through daily routines, and accumulated understanding, we see how Kushite civilization perpetuated itself across generations, not through grand monuments or written proclamations, but through the patient teaching of values and skills, through the creation of tools and techniques that embodied their understanding of how to live well. The tools Pianki creates are perfect not because they are without flaw, but because they are perfectly suited to their purpose. They represent the accumulated wisdom of generations of ironworkers who learned through patient experimentation how to transform raw ore into implements that serve human needs. They embody the Kushite understanding that excellence is not about perfection, but about appropriateness, not about impressing others, but about serving faithfully. The scholar's living memory. In the quiet of the temple library, as oil lamps begin to flicker in the gathering dusk, the elderly scribe Atlanersa pauses in his work to reflect on the documents he has spent his lifetime creating and preserving. Spread before him are scrolls and tablets that record the accumulated wisdom of his people, laws and customs, stories and songs, technical knowledge and philosophical insights. These documents represent something remarkable in the ancient world, a civilization's attempt to understand and record not just its achievements, but its principles, not just what it has accomplished, but how and why it has chosen to live as it has. Unlike the historical records of many ancient peoples, which focus primarily on the deeds of rulers and the outcomes of wars, these Kushite documents pay attention to the daily life of ordinary people, the the small decisions and practices that actually determine the character of a society. As Atlanursa reads through passages he has copied and recopied over the years, he sees in them a coherent vision of what human life can be when it is lived with wisdom and compassion. These are not perfect people or a perfect society, but they are people who have thought carefully about how to live well, who have tried to create institutions and practices that support human flourishing rather than merely human dominance. The documents record disputes resolved through patient negotiation rather than force, innovations developed through careful observation and experimentation rather than accident, educational practices designed to nurture individual potential while strengthening community bonds. They show a people who understood that the most important victories are often invisible ones: the development of character, the accumulation of wisdom, the patient creation of beauty and meaning in daily life. But these documents are more than historical records. They are living teachings that continue to guide and inspire those who read them. The stories of wise judges who found creative solutions to impossible conflicts provide models for contemporary decision-makers. The accounts of craftsmen who achieved excellence through patient practice inspire modern workers to take pride in their own efforts. The descriptions of communities that overcame serious challenges through cooperation and patience offer hope to people facing similar difficulties. The records of individuals who sacrificed personal gain for the common good demonstrate that such selflessness is possible and worthwhile. As Atlanursa works by the light of his flickering lamp, he understands that he is not just preserving the past, but creating resources for the future. The documents he copies and the commentaries he adds will serve generations of readers who will face challenges he cannot imagine, who will need wisdom he cannot provide directly, but who will find guidance in the accumulated understanding of their predecessors. The eternal return of daily life. As full darkness settles over the Kingdom of Kush, the stars emerge in their ancient patterns, the same constellations that have watched over the Nile Valley since the first human beings learned to read meaning in the night sky. In villages and cities throughout the kingdom, families gather around their evening fires, sharing food and stories, planning tomorrow's work, maintaining the countless small connections that bind communities together. The rhythm of this daily life, work and rest, effort and contemplation, individual achievement and collective celebration, represents perhaps the greatest achievement of Kushite civilization. They learned to create a way of life that was both materially prosperous and spiritually satisfying, both individually fulfilling and socially harmonious. Their legacy lies not in dramatic monuments or military conquests, but in the demonstration that human beings can organize their common life around principles of justice and wisdom rather than force and fear. They showed that it is possible to create wealth without exploitation, to achieve security without aggression, to develop sophisticated culture without losing touch with the natural world. In their patient attention to craftsmanship, they demonstrated that work can be a form of meditation, a way of participating in the ongoing creation of beauty and utility in the world. In their approach to education, they showed how knowledge can be shared in ways that empower rather than control, that develop wisdom rather than mere cleverness. In their governmental practices, they proved that authority can be exercised with humility and restraint, that the purpose of power is to serve rather than to dominate. In their religious life, they found ways to honor the sacred that enhanced rather than escaped from daily life. Perhaps most importantly, they created a civilization that was sustainable, that could maintain its essential character and values across many centuries, adapting to new circumstances while preserving its fundamental commitments. They understood that the test of any way of life is not whether it can achieve spectacular successes in the short term, but whether it can provide meaning and purpose across generations. The people of Kush created institutions and practices that served not just their own needs, but those of their children and grandchildren, establishing patterns of life that could endure through centuries of change while maintaining their essential wisdom. The Weaver's Endless Pattern. In a quiet corner of Meroë, as the evening deepens and most of the city settles into rest, an elderly weaver named Kandake continues her work by the light of a small oil lamp. Her fingers move with the automatic precision of decades of practice, guiding threads through the complex patterns that will become cloth of extraordinary beauty and durability. The loom before her is a masterpiece of functional design built by her grandfather's grandfather according to specifications refined over generations of weavers. Every element has been perfected for its purpose, the frame strong enough to maintain precise tension, yet flexible enough to accommodate the natural variations in different fibers, the heddles positioned to create smooth separation of threads, the shuttle shaped to glide effortlessly through even the tightest weave. But the loom is more than a tool. It is a teacher, its operation requiring the weaver to develop patience, rhythm, and attention to detail that serve as spiritual disciplines as well as practical skills. The repetitive motions create a meditative state that allows the mind to rest while the hands continue their work, achieving that perfect balance between activity and repose that characterizes the best of Kushite life. The pattern Kandake weaves tonight has been passed down through her family for 7 generations. But like all living traditions, it has evolved with each weaver who has worked with it. Her grandmother added subtle variations that reflected her own aesthetic sensibilities. Her mother incorporated elements learned from weavers in other parts of the kingdom. Now Kandake finds herself adding her own touches, small modifications that will make this cloth distinctly her own, while maintaining its connection to the long tradition of which she is part. The threads she works with tell their own stories of connection and continuity. The cotton comes from plants grown in fields that have been cultivated along this stretch of the river for over 1,000 years. The varieties grown here have been selected over countless generations for their ability to thrive in the local climate, their resistance to pests and diseases, their suitability for creating different types of cloth. The spinning that transformed raw cotton into thread was performed by women throughout the kingdom, each contributing her skill to the creation of materials that would eventually become clothing, household furnishings, trade goods. The threads carry with them something of each spinner's touch, each woman's care, creating connections between strangers that span great distances. The dyes that color some of the threads come from plants and minerals gathered throughout Kush and beyond. Deep blues from indigo plants cultivated in carefully tended plots, rich reds from madder root harvested in the highlands, golden yellows from flowers that bloom only during certain seasons. Each color required its own knowledge, its own techniques, its own patient preparation of materials. As Kandake works, her movements synchronize with the gentle sounds of the night, the distant lapping of water against the riverbank, the soft calls of night birds, the whispered conversations of families settling into sleep in nearby houses. These sounds become part of the cloth she creates, their rhythms influencing the patterns she weaves, their peace infusing the threads with something that cannot be seen, but can somehow be felt by those who will eventually wear or use the finished fabric. The cloth that emerges from her loom will outlast her own lifetime, carrying within its weave not just the technical excellence of her craftsmanship, but something of her spirit, her patience, her understanding of what it means to create beauty through the careful repetition of simple actions. Those who wear clothing made from this cloth, those who sleep under blankets woven from these threads, will participate in a continuity that stretches back through generations and forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. The astronomers' patient vigil high on the flat roof of the temple complex, where the city's lights give way to the vast dome of the night sky. An elderly astronomer named Kaliut maintains his nightly observation of the celestial patterns that govern time itself. He has been coming to this place for 40 years, watching the slow dance of stars and planets, recording their movements with instruments as simple as carefully positioned stones and as sophisticated as bronze circles, marked with precise gradations. The knowledge he guards and extends is among the most ancient possessed by his people, stretching back to the earliest settlements along the Nile, when the first farmers learned to coordinate their planting with the movements of certain stars. But this ancient knowledge is also constantly renewed, each night's observations adding new data, confirming old predictions, occasionally revealing patterns that require adjustment of traditional understanding. The stars that wheel overhead tonight are the same ones that shone on the first Kushite kings, the same constellations that guided traders across the desert, the same celestial markers that helped architects orient their buildings and farmers plan their planting. Yet each night they appear slightly different. Their positions shifted by the great cycles that govern the cosmos, their relationships changed by movements too slow for individual human lives to perceive but visible to observers who maintain records across generations. Kaliut's instruments are arranged around him with the precision of a craftsman's workshop. Stone markers aligned to track the rising and setting points of significant stars throughout the year. Bronze circles with carefully marked divisions that allow him to measure the angular distances between celestial objects. Water clocks that tick away the hours with the steady rhythm of droplets falling from carefully calibrated containers. But the most important instrument is his memory, trained through decades of observation to recognize subtle patterns, to notice slight changes, to correlate celestial events with earthly phenomena. He can predict eclipses years in advance, can tell by the position of certain star groups exactly what day of the year it is, can determine the optimal times for various agricultural and ceremonial activities. This knowledge serves practical purposes. The calendar he helps maintain governs everything from religious festivals to trading expeditions. But it also serves deeper needs for understanding humanity's place in the larger cosmos. The regularity of celestial motions provides reassurance that there is order in the universe, that the apparent chaos of daily events occurs within larger patterns of meaning and purpose. As he works, Kaliut thinks about the students who will eventually inherit his knowledge, young men and women who are now learning to recognize the major constellations, to use simple instruments, to keep accurate records. The transmission of astronomical knowledge requires not just technical training, but the development of patience, precision, and humility, qualities that serve well in many aspects of life beyond star watching. The records he maintains will outlast his own lifetime, becoming part of an archive that stretches back centuries and will continue forward for centuries more. Future astronomers will build on his observations, just as he has built on those of his predecessors, creating an unbroken chain of careful attention to the movements of the heavens. Tonight, as he records the position of a planet that has been slowly moving against the background of fixed stars, Kaliut participates in an activity that connects him not just to his Kushite ancestors, but to observers throughout the ancient world, Egyptians and Babylonians, Greeks and Indians, all united in the patient work of reading the cosmic patterns that govern time and space. The river's midnight song. In the deepest hours of the night, when even the most dedicated workers have set aside their tasks and joined the great community of sleepers, the Nile continues its ancient journey toward the sea. The river never rests, never pauses in its patient work of carrying water and silt, life and renewal, from the heart of Africa toward the Mediterranean world. But at night, When human activity diminishes to its lowest ebb, the river's voice becomes more audible, its gentle lapping against the banks creating rhythms that seem to echo the very heartbeat of the earth itself. These are the sounds that have lulled countless generations to sleep, the aquatic lullabies that have comforted children and adults alike through the anxious hours when daylight seems very far away. Along the riverbank, night fishermen continue their ancient work, but even they move more quietly now, their voices reduced to whispers, their movements deliberate and economical. They understand that they are participating in something larger than mere fishing. They are part of the river's own life, temporary partners in its endless work of sustaining all the creatures that depend on its bounty. The fish they seek are different at night, species that avoid the daylight hours, that feed and move according to lunar rhythms older than human memory. Catching them requires different techniques, different knowledge, different patience than daytime fishing. The night fishermen have learned to read the water's surface for subtle signs, to interpret the meaning of slight ripples and unusual currents. Their nets are designed for night work, dark colors that won't alarm the fish, weights and floats positioned to work silently, mesh sizes calculated for the particular species most active in darkness. The boats they use are built for stealth rather than capacity, shaped to move through water without creating disturbance, equipped with muffled oars that stroke without splash or creak. As they work, the night fishermen become part of the river's own silence, their breathing synchronized with the water's rhythm, their movements flowing with the current's gentle pulse. They enter a state of heightened awareness where they can sense the presence of fish through vibrations felt through their boat hulls, can predict the movements of their quarry by subtle changes in water temperature and clarity. The fish they catch will feed families tomorrow, will be sold in markets where housewives examine them for freshness, will be prepared according to recipes passed down through generations of river people. But tonight, in the darkness, the act of fishing becomes something approaching prayer, a quiet communion with the forces that sustain all life along the Nile. Other nocturnal activities continue around the sleeping kingdom. Night guards make their rounds, but their footsteps are soft, their voices muted, their lanterns dimmed to avoid disturbing those who rest. They understand that their role is to preserve the peace that allows for restorative sleep, to maintain the security that makes it possible for people to surrender consciousness without fear. Bakers begin the preparation of tomorrow's bread, but their ovens are banked to burn slowly and quietly, their mixing and kneading performed with the economical movements of people who know that excessive noise or activity would disturb the sleeping city. The bread they prepare will nourish the community, but the manner of its preparation also nurtures the communal rest that restores strength for another day's work. The eternal craftsman's dream. In the realm between waking and sleeping, where consciousness gradually releases its hold on the details of daily life, the spirits of ancient craftsmen continue their work in the timeless workshops of memory and dream. Here, the goldsmith Shabaka still taps his tiny hammer against precious metal, but the rhythms have become eternal music, the patterns he creates flowing into infinite spirals of beauty that connect all things to all other things. The iron that Pianki shapes glows not with ordinary fire, but with the light of stars, and the tools he creates serve not just earthly purposes, but cosmic ones. Implements for tending the gardens of space, for harvesting the crops of time itself. His hammer rings against the anvil of eternity, each blow reverberating through dimensions beyond the physical, shaping not just metal, but the very fabric of existence itself. Amonarinas, the young scribe learning the new writing, finds that her letters have become living things, each symbol a doorway into new realms of understanding. The words she writes reshape themselves as she watches, becoming not just records of events, but active forces that influence the future, that speak across generations, that carry the wisdom of the past into times yet undreamed of. Candake's loom grows until it spans the universe. Its warp threads the rivers that connect distant worlds. It's weft the paths that souls follow from life to life. The patterns she weaves are the very patterns of existence itself: birth and death, growth and decay, love and loss, all interwoven in designs of such complexity and beauty that mortal minds can glimpse only fragments of their total glory. These dream craftsmen work without fatigue, without the limitations that constrain earthly labor. Their materials are inexhaustible, their time unlimited, their skills perfected beyond any mortal possibility, yet they work with the same patience, the same attention to detail, the same dedication to excellence that characterize their earthly existence. In this realm of eternal craftsmanship, the values that guided Kushite civilization continue to operate, but freed from the constraints of physical existence. The emphasis on balance and harmony becomes literally cosmic in scope. The respect for individual dignity expands to encompass all conscious beings across all possible worlds. The commitment to sustainable practices extends to the management of infinity itself. The tools these eternal craftsmen use are forged from pure concept, tempered in the fires of absolute truth, sharpened on the whetstones of perfect justice. Their workshops are illuminated not by oil lamps or sunlight, but by the radiance of pure understanding, warmed not by fires of wood or charcoal, but by the heat of universal compassion. Yet for all their transcendent power, these dream craftsmen remain recognizably themselves. Shabaka, with his patient precision; Pianki, with his intuitive understanding of materials; Amanarenas, with her joy in the power of written words; Kandake, with her rhythmic meditation at the loom. They have been perfected, but not changed; elevated, but not transformed into something alien. They represent the Kushite understanding that the best human qualities, patience, skill, dedication, wisdom, are not merely useful for earthly life, but are themselves eternal values that participate in the divine nature of existence itself. The careful attention to detail that made Shabaka's earthly jewelry beautiful also makes the cosmos itself a work of art. The strength and flexibility that Pianki built into his tools also characterizes the structure of reality itself. The children's endless tomorrow. In the houses and compounds scattered throughout the sleeping kingdom, children rest in the deep, peaceful slumber that only the truly secure can achieve. Their dreams are filled with the images and sounds of their daily lives, but transformed by the magical processes of sleep into adventures and possibilities that stretch far beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience. A little girl who spent the day learning to weave dreams of threads that stretch between stars, of patterns that encompass whole galaxies, of cloth that can wrap around planets and keep them warm through the cold of cosmic winter. Her child's imagination transforms the humble domestic skill she is learning into something magical and infinite. A boy who helped his father in the forge dreams of metals that glow with their own inner light, of tools that can reshape mountains, of hammers that ring with music so beautiful it makes flowers bloom and birds sing. In his dreams, the craft he is beginning to learn becomes a means of transforming not just metal, but the entire world. Another child, who practiced writing letters at school, dreams of words that come alive as they are written, that dance off the page and perform the actions they describe, that connect the writer to everyone who has ever lived or ever will live. Language becomes in her dreams not just communication, but creation itself. These sleeping children are the future of Kush, but they are also its eternal present. In their dreams, the values and skills their elders are teaching them continue to grow and develop. freed from the limitations of physical reality. The patience they are learning becomes infinite patience. The creativity they are encouraged to express becomes boundless creativity. They dream not as children who will someday become adults and abandon childish things, but as young representatives of humanity's eternal capacity for growth and wonder. Their dreams reflect not just personal wishes, but the collective aspirations of their civilization. The hope that wisdom will continue to grow, that skills will continue to develop, that beauty will continue to be created. In their sleeping minds, the lessons they have learned during the day continue to unfold, revealing new meanings and applications. The mathematical principles they studied become the fundamental structures underlying all existence. The historical stories they heard become templates for understanding the epic drama in which they themselves will play roles. The songs they learn to sing become part of the cosmic music that governs the movements of planets and the cycles of the seasons. The games they played become practice for the great game of existence itself, with stakes and rewards beyond any earthly imagination. Yet these cosmic dreams remain anchored to the specific place and time that shaped them. The children dream of rivers like their own Nile, of workshops like those they see every day, of families like the ones that nurture them. Their unlimited imaginations work with the familiar materials of their daily experience, transforming the known into the miraculous, rather than abandoning it for pure fantasy. This grounding in specific experience gives their dreams a solidity and relevance that pure fantasy could never achieve. They are learning not to escape from reality, but to see reality's infinite potential, not to reject the world they inherit, but to understand the world they might help create. The merchant's eternal journey. On the dream rivers that flow through the sleeping consciousness of the trading community, merchant vessels continue their journeys through landscapes that shift and change with the fluid logic of dreams. But these are not chaotic dream journeys. They follow routes as precise and purposeful as any earthly trade expedition, guided by principles as solid as those that govern waking commerce. Amani Shaketo, the trader we followed on her daylight journey, now pilots a boat that can sail upstream as easily as down, that can carry unlimited cargo without becoming heavy, that can navigate channels that exist only when needed and disappear when their purpose is fulfilled. But she conducts her dream commerce according to the same ethical principles that guided her earthly trading: fairness to all parties, respect for different cultures, attention to the long-term consequences of her actions. The goods she carries in her dream vessel represent not just material objects, but the abstract values they embody. Gold becomes the principle of enduring worth that survives all changes. Ivory transforms into the wisdom that comes only with age and experience. Exotic woods become the strength and flexibility needed to build communities that can withstand the storms of time. Her customers in this dream marketplace are not just people from different regions, but representatives of different eras, different ways of life, different approaches to the eternal human challenges of survival and flourishing. She trades with ancient ancestors who can offer the wisdom of deep tradition, and with unborn descendants who bring knowledge of possibilities not yet imagined. The negotiations that take place in these dream markets extend far beyond simple exchange of goods for payment. They become cosmic conversations about values and priorities, about the relationship between individual needs and community welfare, about the balance between innovation and tradition, between local identity and universal human concerns. Payment in these dream transactions is made not in gold or silver, but in understanding, in appreciation, in the mutual recognition of common humanity that transcends all differences of culture and circumstance. The wealth that accumulates from such trading is not material, but spiritual, an ever-deepening sense of connection with the vast human family. an ever-expanding capacity for empathy and wisdom. The routes followed by these dream traders connect not just geographical locations, but states of consciousness, levels of understanding, modes of being. A single journey might take them from the innocence of childhood to the wisdom of age, from the certainty of tradition to the excitement of discovery, from the solitude of individual reflection to the communion of shared purpose. Yet these fantastic journeys remain grounded in the practical wisdom of earthly trading. The dream merchants still evaluate quality carefully, still negotiate terms that benefit all parties, still maintain the relationships of trust that make long-term commerce possible. They demonstrate that the highest flights of imagination can coexist with the most practical concerns, that dreams and reality can inform and enrich each other. The sunset's endless return. As our deep journey through the world of ancient Kush approaches its quiet conclusion, we find ourselves once again in the eternal moment of sunset, that daily miracle when day transforms into night without fanfare or drama. Through the simple process of earth turning away from sun, of light gradually yielding to darkness in the endless dance of cosmic cycles. But this is not just any sunset. This is the sunset that contains all sunsets, the eternal evening that encompasses every end of day that has ever blessed the Nile Valley. In this timeless moment, all the craftsmen who have ever worked along this river set down their tools simultaneously. All the families that have ever gathered here share their evening meals together. All the children who have ever played in these streets join in a single, infinite game. The sun that sets on the Kingdom of Kush tonight is the same sun that rose on it this morning, and yesterday morning, and every morning since time began. But it is also the sun that will rise tomorrow, and the day after, and for all the mornings yet to come. In the eternal present of this perfect sunset, past and future come together in a single moment that contains all moments. The light that paints the mud brick walls and the water jars, the tools and the faces, is not just the light of this particular evening, but the light of all evenings, the accumulated radiance of every sunset that has ever blessed this place. It carries within itself the golden memories of countless days of patient work, countless evenings of family gathering, countless nights of peaceful rest. The air that carries the sense of cooking food and blooming flowers is the same air that has carried these scents for thousands of years, that will carry them for thousands more. Each breath taken by each person in this eternal evening connects them to all who have breathed here before, all who will breathe hereafter. The sounds that fill this sunset moment, the lowing of cattle, the splash of water, the murmur of conversation, the laughter of children, are not separate sounds, but parts of a single eternal music that has been playing since the first human settlement appeared along the Nile. Each voice that joins this cosmic symphony makes it more complete, more beautiful, more truly representative of the full human experience. In this eternal sunset, all the achievements of Kushite civilization reach their perfect fulfillment. The patience that guided their craftsmanship becomes infinite patience. The wisdom that shaped their governance becomes absolute wisdom. The compassion that characterized their relationships becomes universal compassion. Yet these perfected qualities remain recognizably human, recognizably connected to the specific place and time that nurtured them. The eternal craftsman still works with familiar tools on familiar materials. The perfect ruler still governs through consultation and consensus rather than command. The absolute teacher still begins with simple observations and practical examples. This is the gift that Kush offers to the world, the demonstration that human values at their best are not just useful strategies for earthly existence, but glimpses of eternal truths, participations in the divine nature of reality itself. The careful attention to detail that makes earthly objects beautiful also makes the cosmos itself a work of art. The patient accumulation of small excellences that characterizes earthly craftsmanship also characterizes the very process by which existence itself is created and maintained. The night's gentle embrace. As darkness completes its gentle conquest of the sky, as the last traces of sunset fade into the infinite depth of night, the Kingdom of Kush settles into the profound rest that prepares for tomorrow's renewal. But this is not the sleep of exhaustion or escape. It is the peaceful rest of those who know they have lived well, who have used their time and energy in service of values worth preserving, who can surrender consciousness with confidence that they will wake to another day of meaningful work. In houses throughout the kingdom, families complete their evening rituals with the same attention to detail that characterizes their daytime work. Children are tucked into beds made comfortable not just with soft coverings, but with the love of parents who understand that good rest is essential for growth and development. Adults settle into sleep, knowing that they have contributed something to the great work of civilization, that their day's efforts have added to rather than subtracted from the store of beauty and wisdom in the world. The night sounds that accompany this great settling into sleep are gentle ones. The soft splash of water against riverbanks, the distant call of night birds, the whispered conversations of guards making their rounds. These sounds create a peaceful backdrop that encourages rest while providing reassurance that all is well, that the community continues to function even during the vulnerable hours of sleep. The stars that emerge in the darkening sky are not distant, cold points of light but familiar friends, celestial companions who have watched over this valley since humans first learned to read meaning in the night sky. The constellations tell stories of heroes and adventures, but also of everyday people who lived with courage and wisdom, who faced challenges with patience and determination, who found meaning in the simple work of sustaining life and nurturing growth. The moon, whether full or crescent, new or old, provides just enough light to comfort without disturbing, to illuminate the paths that night workers follow without destroying the darkness needed for peaceful rest. Its phases mark the passage of time in cycles that human beings can comprehend, providing reassurance that change, though constant, follows predictable patterns. As sleep deepens across the kingdom, individual consciousness gives way to something larger. The collective dreams of a civilization that has learned to live in harmony with the natural world and with itself. These are not the troubled dreams of people tormented by guilt or anxiety, but the peaceful dreams of those who have lived according to their deepest values, who have contributed to rather than detracted from the common good. In these dreams, the work of the day continues in transformed fashion. The craftsman's tools become instruments for shaping not just material objects, but reality itself. The farmer's seeds grow into forests that span galaxies. The teacher's lessons become the fundamental principles that govern existence. The parent's love becomes the force that holds the universe together. But these cosmic dreams remain grounded in the specific experiences that shaped them. The eternal craftsman still works with familiar tools and materials. The cosmic farmer still tends plants that grew along the Nile. The universal teacher still uses examples drawn from daily life in ancient Kush. The infinite parent still speaks with the voice and manner of particular mothers and fathers who loved specific children in a particular place and time. The river's eternal flowing. Through all of this, through the day's work and the evening's rest, through the dreams of night and the awakening of dawn, through the seasons and the years and the centuries, the Nile continues its ancient journey toward the sea. It carries with it not just water and silt, but the accumulated experiences of all who have lived along its banks. all who have drawn life from its flow, all who have learned wisdom from its patient persistence. The river remembers everything: the first farmers who learned to work with its floods, the first craftspeople who used its clay and reeds, the first traders who followed its course between different lands and different peoples. It remembers every family that has gathered at its banks for water, every child who has learned to swim in its current, every fisherman who has cast nets into its depths. But the river also anticipates everything: the future generations who will continue to depend on its bounty, the new challenges they will face, the new solutions they will discover. It flows not just from past to present, but from present to future, carrying the gifts of each generation to the next, ensuring that wisdom hard-won is not lost, that beauty carefully created continues to inspire. In its endless flowing, the river embodies the deepest teaching of Kushite civilization: that the most profound truths are often the simplest ones, that the most lasting achievements are often the most humble ones, that the greatest power is the power to nurture and sustain, rather than to dominate and destroy. Water, the softest of substances, carves canyons through the hardest rock, through nothing more than patient persistence. Drop by drop, day by day, year by year, it wears away obstacles that seemed permanent, creating channels that will guide its flow for generations to come. In the same way, the gentle persistence of human beings living according to wisdom and compassion can transform the world in ways that force and violence never could. The river teaches that strength and gentleness are not opposites but partners, that power and humility can coexist, that the mightiest forces in the universe operate through quiet consistency rather than dramatic gestures. It shows by its own example that the most effective approach to obstacles is not to attack them head-on, but to flow around them, to find the path of least resistance while never abandoning the ultimate destination. These lessons, learned by countless generations of people who lived along the Nile, became the foundation of a civilization that achieved greatness, not through conquest or domination, but through the patient cultivation of wisdom, beauty, and human dignity. They created communities where people could flourish, techniques that worked with rather than against natural processes, institutions that served human needs while respecting the larger patterns of existence. The eternal present of memory. As we near the end of our long journey through the world of ancient Kush, we find ourselves not at a conclusion, but at a recognition that this world has never really ended, that the values and wisdom of these ancient people continue to flow like the Nile itself through all subsequent history, enriching every age that learns to recognize their worth. The craftsmen of Kush still work in every modern workshop where attention to detail and pride in workmanship create objects of both utility and beauty. The farmers of Kush still till every field where crops are grown in harmony with natural cycles, where soil is treated as a living resource to be nurtured rather than a mere substrate to be exploited. The teachers of Kush still guide every classroom where knowledge is shared with respect for the learner's individual needs and potential, where wisdom is valued above mere information, where character formation is considered as important as skill development. The rulers of Kush still govern every community where leadership is exercised as service rather than privilege, where decisions are made through consultation and consensus rather than decree, where the welfare of all is considered more important than the advantage of a few. The merchants of Kush still trade in every marketplace where business is conducted according to principles of fairness and mutual benefit, where relationships are valued above transactions, where long-term sustainability is considered more important than short-term profit. The families of Kush still gather around every table, where food is shared with gratitude, where stories connect past to present, where love is expressed through patient attention to each member's needs and dreams. In this sense, the civilization of Kush has never died. It has simply transformed, its essential spirit finding expression in new forms appropriate to new circumstances, while maintaining its core commitment to wisdom, beauty, justice, and compassion. The kingdom that once flourished along the Nile between the cataracts exists now in the realm of memory and possibility, in the dreams of all who seek to live according to principles higher than mere survival or success. It lives in every moment when patience triumphs over haste, when quality is chosen over quantity, when the common good is placed above personal advantage. The golden light that once illuminated the workshops of ancient craftsmen now shines wherever human beings create objects or relationships characterized by excellence and love. The gentle rhythms that once governed daily life along the ancient Nile now pulse wherever communities organize themselves according to natural cycles and human needs, rather than artificial deadlines and arbitrary demands. The river that nourished the fields of ancient Kush now flows through every situation where abundance is shared rather than hoarded, where resources are used sustainably rather than wastefully, where the needs of future generations are considered as carefully as the demands of the present moment. The sleeping kingdom's eternal rest. And now, as our journey draws to its peaceful close, we can imagine that eternal moment when all of ancient Kush settles into the deep, restorative sleep that prepares for tomorrow's renewal. This is not the sleep of endings, but the sleep of transformation, not the rest of exhaustion, but the peace of completion. In workshops throughout the sleeping kingdom, tools rest in their proper places, ready for tomorrow's work, but freed for tonight from the demands of productivity. The gold rests in its containers, holding within its shining substance all the patience and skill that shaped it. The iron cools in the darkness, its strength and flexibility preserved by the wisdom of those who knew how to work with its essential nature. In the scribe's chambers, scrolls and tablets hold their knowledge quietly, their words waiting to teach new generations the accumulated wisdom of their ancestors. The letters of the new script sleep like seeds in winter soil, ready to sprout into new growth when the time is right. In family compounds throughout the kingdom, parents and children rest in the security of love that has been expressed not just in words, but in countless small acts of care and attention. The grinding stones rest beside stores of grain that will nourish tomorrow's meals. The water jars stand full and cool, ready to refresh tomorrow's workers. On the river, boats rock gently at their moorings, their hulls darkened by countless journeys, but still strong enough to carry tomorrow's cargoes. The river itself continues its eternal flowing, but more quietly now, its voice muted to a gentle whisper that disturbs no one's rest. In the fields beyond the city, crops grow silently in the darkness, their roots drawing nourishment from soil enriched by generations of careful tending. The irrigation channels flow with just enough water to sustain growth without waste, their gentle murmur adding to the night's peaceful symphony. Above it all, the stars wheel in their ancient courses, the same constellations that guided the first settlers along the Nile, the same celestial clockwork that will continue to mark time long after the last human voice has fallen silent. But tonight they serve not as distant, impersonal forces, but as gentle guardians, familiar friends watching over the sleep of a civilization that learned to live in harmony with cosmic rhythms. This is the gift that ancient Kush offers to all who are willing to receive it, the demonstration that human life at its best is not a struggle against nature, but a participation in natural harmony, not a competition with others, but a collaboration in the great work of creating beauty and meaning in the world. The wisdom they achieve through patient observation and careful experimentation continues to be available to any who choose to learn from their example. The beauty they created, through attention to detail and respect for materials, continues to inspire all who encounter it. The justice they establish through consultation and compromise continues to provide a model for communities seeking to organize themselves according to principles higher than force or fear. The peace they found through living according to their deepest values continues to be possible for any who are willing to make the same commitment to wisdom over cleverness, character over reputation, the common good over personal advantage. The final blessing. As the last light fades from the western sky and the ancient kingdom settles into its eternal rest, we can carry with us something of its gentle confidence, its quiet certainty that the most important work is often the most humble work, that the greatest achievements are often the most hidden ones, that the most powerful forces in the universe operate through love and patience, rather than violence and haste. The story we have shared tonight continues to live in every heart that recognizes its truth, in every hand that creates rather than destroys, in every voice that speaks for justice and compassion rather than privilege and power. It lives in every community that chooses cooperation over competition, sustainability over exploitation, wisdom over mere cleverness. The craftsmen of ancient Kush still work wherever excellence is valued above efficiency, where beauty is created not for its own sake, but for the joy it brings to those who encounter it. Their patient attention to detail continues to inspire all who understand that the way something is done is as important as what is accomplished. The farmers of ancient Kush still tend their fields wherever crops are grown in harmony with natural cycles, where soil is treated as a living community rather than mere dirt, where the long-term health of the land is considered as important as the immediate harvest. The families of ancient Kush still gather wherever people share their lives with generosity and patience, where children are raised not just to be successful but to be wise, where elders are honored not just for their achievements, but for their understanding. The river that nourished their civilization continues to flow wherever human beings choose to live, according to principles that honor both individual dignity and collective welfare, wherever communities organize themselves according to natural rhythms rather than artificial demands, wherever wisdom accumulates through the patient sharing of knowledge and experience. And now, as the stars trace their ancient paths above the sleeping kingdom, may you find rest beside the stories of quiet lives long past. May you dream of patient craftsmen and gentle rulers, of wise teachers and loving families, of communities where the work of living was also the practice of wisdom. May your own life be blessed with something of their patience, their attention to beauty, their understanding that the greatest achievements are often the most humble ones, that the most lasting victories are won not through force, but through the gentle persistence of love and wisdom. Sleep peacefully now, knowing that the river still flows, that the stars still wheel in their courses, that the ancient wisdom still lives in every heart that chooses compassion over cruelty, creation over destruction, the long path of sustainable growth over the short road of immediate gratification. Rest in the knowledge that tomorrow offers its own opportunities for small excellences, its own chances to participate in the eternal work of creating beauty and meaning in the world, its own possibilities for adding to rather than subtracting from the great store of wisdom and love that connects all human beings across time and space. And as you drift into dreams as peaceful as the evening prayers of ancient scribes, as gentle as the river's endless song, as eternal as the stars that watched over the golden kingdom of Kush, may you carry with you the blessing of their example, the understanding that the most profound revolutions are often the quietest ones, that the most important victories are often invisible, and that the truest wealth lies not in what we possess, but in what we create and share, and leave as gifts for those who will come after us. Sleep well, carried by the gentle currents of this ancient story, toward dreams as patient and wise as the civilization that inspired them, toward rest as deep and restorative as the night that blessed the Nile Valley for countless centuries, toward peace as lasting as the river itself, which continues to flow from the heart of Africa toward the sea, carrying within its waters the accumulated blessings of all who have ever lived along its banks. May you wake tomorrow with something of their quiet confidence, their gentle strength, their understanding that every day offers opportunities for small acts of craftsmanship and kindness. Every moment chances to contribute to the ongoing creation of a world worthy of our highest aspirations and deepest love. Rest now in the wisdom of the ancients, in the patience of the river, in the quiet confidence of those who understand that the best achievements are often the most gentle ones, and that the truest victories are those that create more beauty and meaning in the world for all who come after.